Right now, in this quiet moment, as you're listening to this, you're engaging in something that most people believe is impossible. You are practicing Buddhist philosophy without even realizing it. Welcome to Silent River Temple, where tonight you'll discover that the deep tranquility you've been searching for hasn't been far away. It has been hiding in the most ordinary, overlooked moments of your life. Whether you're lying in bed, staring at the ceiling unable to sleep, or perhaps reflecting on a long day, you've stumbled upon a secret that could shift your entire perspective. And here is the beautiful part. You don't need to become someone new, or master complex techniques, or change your beliefs. You just need to learn to see what is already here. If this space feels right to you, I'd love to know where in the world you are joining our circle from tonight. Drop a comment with your city, or just the time on your clock. There is something profoundly magical about knowing we are connected across oceans and time zones. A global community Buddhist stories tell us is connected by the same shared breath. Maybe adjust your blanket, take a slow, deep breath, or simply let your shoulders drop away from your ears, because what I'm about to share will gently surprise you. In a quiet, sun-drenched monastery nestled deep within the rolling green hills of Italy, families from every corner of the globe gather each summer to learn something revolutionary about the nature of daily life. These parents often arrive in a state of exhaustion, carrying heavy luggage and even heavier minds, convinced that they need to make a difficult choice. They believe they must choose between taking care of their beloved, but demanding children, and finding the inner peace they crave. They arrive with a specific image in their minds. They expect that to practice Buddhist meditation, they must find a soundproof room, far away from crying babies, busy schedules, and the sticky hands of toddlers. They imagine peace looks like a statue, still and silent, untouched by the chaotic reality of diaper changes and temper tantrums. But the wise teachers at this retreat know a secret that turns this entire way of thinking upside down. The secret is simple, yet it changes everything you think you know about spirituality. The secret is this: your family time is your practice time. The noise is the bell of mindfulness. Washing dishes is not a chore to get through. It is a sacred ritual. Being patient with a cranky child who refuses to put on their shoes is spiritual training of the highest order. Sitting in gridlock traffic is not an obstacle to your peace. It is a profound opportunity for peace. Everything you think is standing in the way of your spiritual life actually is your spiritual life. The very things you are trying to escape are the gateway you have been looking for. Think about your own morning routine for a moment. Visualize yourself standing at the kitchen sink. You probably rush through washing your breakfast dishes, scrubbing quickly, your mind already racing ahead to the meeting you have at 9, the emails piling up, the errands you need to run. You treat the dishes as a nuisance, a barrier between you and the real important things of your day. But what if I told you that those few minutes at the sink, with your hands submerged in suds, could become the most peaceful, restorative part of your entire day? What if washing your coffee cup could teach you more about genuine happiness than reading 100 self-help books or attending a dozen expensive seminars? In the Zen tradition, there is a profound teaching that says, when you wash the rice, wash the rice. When you wash the dishes, wash the dishes. It sounds almost too simple, doesn't it? But to wash the dishes completely means something very specific. It means washing them without thinking about your to-do list. It means scrubbing the plate without planning your next difficult conversation. It means rinsing the spoon without trying to solve tomorrow's problems. It means just being there, fully inhabiting your body in that moment. Imagine feeling the sensation of the warm water embracing your hands, soothing the joints and muscles. Imagine watching the iridescent soap bubbles form, shimmering with rainbows for a brief second before they pop and disappear. A tiny, perfect lesson in impermanence, right there in your sink. Imagine feeling the smooth texture of the ceramic cup against your palms, the weight of it, the sound of the water splashing against the stainless steel. This is what it means to be fully present with a simple task. When you approach the moment this way, the hierarchy of important and unimportant tasks dissolves. There is no longer a divide between the sacred and the profane. This isn't just about being mindful for the sake of focus. It is about discovering a liberating truth, that peace does not require perfect conditions. It does not require a silent mountaintop or a cave in the Himalayas. It requires only your full, undivided presence with whatever is in front of you right now. Most people live their lives leaning forward, constantly waiting for the next moment to arrive so they can finally relax. They think, once I finish the dishes, then I can rest. Once the kids are asleep, then I can have some peace. Once I get the promotion, then I can be happy. But this habit of leaning forward creates a permanent state of low-level anxiety. You are never quite here. You are always leaning toward a there that never truly arrives. The practice of washing the bowl invites you to stop leaning. It invites you to stand upright in the center of your own life, finding the stillness that exists right in the middle of the movement. It teaches you that if you cannot find peace while washing a cup, you will not find it while sitting on a meditation cushion. But if you can find it with the cup, you can find it anywhere. Here is what most people fundamentally misunderstand about spiritual practice and Zen meditation. They compartmentalize it. They treat it like a specific activity, similar to going to the gym or taking a vitamin supplement. They think it is something you do for 30 minutes in the quiet of the early morning, before the house wakes up, and perhaps for another 30 minutes at night, as a way to wind down. They create a special, spiritual time and separate it from the rest of their existence. But let's look at the mathematics of that equation for a moment. If you are diligent enough to practice for an hour a day, which is more than most people manage, that still leaves 23 hours of your day completely untouched by peace. That leaves 23 hours for stress to accumulate, for reactions to take over, for anxiety to run the show. It leaves the vast majority of your life outside the sanctuary of your practice. This approach creates a painful split in your soul. You have your spiritual self, who is calm, kind, and breathes deeply while sitting on a cushion. And then you have your everyday self, who is rushed, irritable, and reactive the moment you step off that cushion and into the chaos of the world. You might know this feeling well. You finish a session of meditation for anxiety, feeling a sense of spaciousness and calm. You feel centered, but then, 5 minutes later, you walk into the kitchen and step on a toy left on the floor, or you see a sink full of dirty dishes that someone else promised to wash, or you check your phone and see a stressful email from work. And in a split second, that peace evaporates as if it never existed. You snap at your partner, you fume internally, your shoulders tense up, and then you feel guilty. You think, my meditation didn't work, or I'm not good at this. But the problem isn't that you are bad at meditating. The problem is the definition of practice itself. The real question isn't whether you can find calm in a soundproof room with soft lighting and the scent of lavender. That is relatively easy. Anyone can be peaceful in paradise. The real question, the one that actually determines the quality of your life, is whether you can find calm while your kids are arguing loudly over a video game in the next room. It is whether you can maintain your center when your boss is making unreasonable demands and the deadline is approaching. It is whether you can breathe deeply and remain open when your phone won't stop buzzing with notifications, each one demanding a piece of your fractured attention. We tend to view these daily interruptions as enemies of our peace. We think, if only I didn't have this job, I could be peaceful. If only my family were quieter, I could be spiritual. If only I had more time, I could find myself. We spend our lives fighting against the very texture of our lives, trying to smooth it out so we can finally relax. But this resistance is exactly what exhausts us. Tonight, you are going to learn something that sounds impossible, perhaps even radical, but it is absolutely true. The very things you think are preventing you from finding peace, your busy schedule, your family responsibilities, your ordinary daily tasks, the traffic jams, the difficult conversations, are actually the perfect opportunities to discover the freedom you have been seeking. This isn't about adding more to your already full life. You don't need another item on your to-do list labeled, "Be more spiritual." You don't need to wake up an hour earlier or retreat to a cave. This is about seeing your life with completely new eyes. It is about understanding why Buddhist masters say that washing one bowl mindfully, feeling the water and the ceramic, can bring more joy than achieving everything on your bucket list while you are distracted and anxious. There is a story of a young student who asked his teacher, "Master, I meditate diligently every morning, but I still feel heavy and burdened by my day. When does the real transformation happen?" The master smiled and pointed to a large, heavy stone in the garden. "Pick up that stone," he said. The student struggled, but lifted the heavy rock. "Now," the master said, "walk with it." The student walked around the garden, his arms shaking, sweat pouring down his face. "It is heavy," the student complained. "Put it down," said the master. The student dropped the rock with a loud thud and let out a huge sigh of relief. "That feeling," the master said, "is what happens when you stop carrying the idea that your life is a burden. The rock is just a rock. The burden is your resistance to holding it." The families in that French monastery discovered this same truth. They learned that the practice isn't separate from real life. The practice is real life approached with awareness, kindness, and the radical understanding that this moment, exactly as it is, contains everything you need. They realized that the crying baby isn't an interruption to the meditation. The crying baby is the bell of mindfulness, calling them back to compassion. The traffic jam isn't a barrier to arrival. It is a chance to practice patience and sit with themselves without needing to be anywhere else. By the time we finish our journey together tonight, you will understand why a simple monastery teaches that the path to extraordinary peace runs directly through the most ordinary activities. You will know why washing dishes can be a doorway to freedom, and why the ancient art of letting go might be the exact thing that finally lets you have everything you have ever truly wanted. It begins by taking off the spiritual suit and realizing that your spirituality is your skin. It is with you everywhere, in every moment, especially the messy ones. There is a phenomenon unfolding in our world right now that would have deeply fascinated the ancient masters. We have invented more ways to measure power and success than any civilization in history. We have created complex systems to quantify our worth. We count the number of followers on our social media profiles. We track the digits accumulating in our investment accounts. We print elaborate titles on heavy cardstock business cards. We measure the square footage of our homes and the horsepower of our vehicles. We have become experts at measuring the container of our lives, while often forgetting to taste the water inside it. But if you pause for a moment, perhaps right now, in the safety of this night, and look closely at the people who seem to have won this game of accumulation, you might notice something strange. You might notice a discrepancy that the glossy photos don't show. Many of the people who possess all the external markers of power seem to be anything but peaceful. They do not seem relaxed. They do not seem free. In fact, many of them appear to be running a race that gets faster the further they go. This is not a criticism of success. It is not a judgment of wealth or achievement. Rather, it is a compassionate observation that points to something profound about the nature of true power. It is an invitation to look behind the curtain. The CEO who runs a global empire but stares at the ceiling at 3 a.m., unable to quiet his racing mind, is he powerful? The influencer who has millions of adoring fans but feels a spike of panic if a post doesn't get enough likes, is she secure? We have confused the ability to control circumstances with the ability to be at peace with circumstances. We have confused the accumulation of resources with the cultivation of contentment. We have built castles, but we have forgotten to check the foundation. Wisdom traditions, particularly within Zen Buddhism, developed over thousands of years of observing the human mind, recognize that there are two completely different operating systems for power. The first is what we might call worldly power. This is the power of having. It is the power of status, wealth, and influence over others. It is a power that requires constant maintenance. It is like building a sandcastle near the tide line. You have to constantly rebuild the walls, dig the moats deeper, and defend it against the inevitable waves of change. The more of this power you have, the more energy you must expend to protect it. You become a guard of your own life, constantly scanning for threats, worried about losing what you have gathered. It is exhausting. It is a power that drains you. But most of our world has forgotten about the second kind of power. The ancient teachers recognized three completely different kinds of strength. These aren't powers that control others, manipulate outcomes, or accumulate vast storehouses of wealth. They are powers that do something far more valuable. They free you. They liberate you from the exhausting, endless cycle of always needing more to feel okay. When Buddhist teachers evaluate someone's spiritual maturity, they use a different set of metrics than our modern society. They don't ask, how much has this person accumulated? They don't ask, how many people listen when this person speaks? They don't even look at the external trappings of spiritual success, like how many retreats someone has attended, how many hours they have sat in meditation, or how many years they have been practicing. You can sit on a cushion for 20 years and still be trapped in anger and ego. The teachers know this. Instead, they look for three specific qualities that reveal genuine spiritual maturity. These qualities are quiet. They are often invisible to the casual observer. They don't scream for attention, but when you are in the presence of someone who possesses them, you feel something shift inside you. You feel safer. You feel clearer. You feel the noise of the world drop away. These three qualities are so fundamentally different from what our culture celebrates that recognizing them can completely shift how you see success, strength, and what it means to live a good life. It shifts your focus from the resume virtues, the things you list on a job application, to the eulogy virtues, the things people will remember about how you made them feel. Imagine for a moment that you are carrying a heavy backpack. Worldly power says, get stronger so you can carry a heavier backpack. Add more rocks to it. Precious rocks, gold rocks, but rocks nonetheless. Spiritual power says, why are you carrying the backpack? Set it down. The shift we are making tonight is from the power of adding to the power of being. It is a move from a power that is fragile and easily threatened to a power that is robust and cannot be taken away. If your power comes from your job title, you lose your power when you lose your job. If your power comes from your youth and beauty, you lose your power as you age. If your power comes from your money, you are vulnerable to every shift in the market. But the three spiritual powers we are about to explore, these belong to you. They are you. No thief can steal them. No market crash can devalue them. No passage of time can erode them. In fact, they are the only things in life that actually tend to grow stronger and more refined as we get older. Tonight, as you lie there, perhaps feeling the weight of your own responsibilities, consider this possibility. You may have been judging yourself by the wrong scorecard. You may have been feeling powerless because you were measuring your strength by how much you could control rather than by how much you could love, how clearly you could see, and how freely you could let go. The first of these profound spiritual powers is compassion. But we must pause here, because this word has been softened and diluted by our culture. When most people hear compassion, they imagine a weak, sentimental feeling. They think of a doormat, someone who lets others walk all over them, who has no boundaries, who smiles politely while being mistreated. This is not the compassion the masters speak of. Real compassion is fierce. It is solid. It is courageous. Think of a lighthouse standing on a jagged rock in the middle of a raging ocean. The lighthouse does not run around trying to smooth out the waves. It does not scream at the wind to stop blowing. It does not dive into the water to try to hold up every ship. It simply stands. It stands tall, rooted in the bedrock, and it shines its light without wavering. It offers a steady, reliable presence in the midst of the storm. Its power lies not in controlling the weather, but in remaining present regardless of the weather. This is compassion as a spiritual power. It is the ability to be that lighthouse for others. You don't try to fix their problems for them. That is often just a disguised form of control. You don't try to take away their pain, because sometimes their pain is their greatest teacher. Instead, your presence helps them navigate their own storm safely. Think about the person in your life who makes you feel the most safe, the most understood. When you are falling apart, they probably don't rush in with a 10-point plan to fix your life. They probably don't offer unsolicited advice or tell you "I told you so." They just sit with you. They look at you with eyes that say, "I am here. I am not afraid of your pain. You don't have to hide this from me." That quality of being completely present with whatever is happening, that is compassion. It is a muscle. It grows stronger every time you use it, and unlike physical energy, it never runs out. The more you give, the more you have. But here is the hardest part for most of us. True compassion must also turn inward. It must include you. Most of us have learned to be our own harshest critics, our own cruelest taskmasters. We have an internal voice that narrates our lives with a constant stream of judgment. "You shouldn't have said that. You're so lazy. Why can't you get it together?" We mistakenly believe that this constant self-judgment is necessary, that it is the whip we need to crack to keep ourselves moving forward. We think that if we stop beating ourselves up, we will become complacent and stop growing. Buddhist philosophy teaches us something radically different. It suggests that beating yourself up actually makes change harder, not easier. When you are under attack, even from yourself, your system goes into defense mode. You become rigid, fearful, and closed off. You cannot learn when you are defending yourself against your own internal bully. When you practice genuine self-compassion, you are creating a safe internal environment where growth naturally happens. Imagine a flower. You don't make a flower grow by yelling at it or stomping on it. You provide it with good soil, sunlight, and water. Self-compassion is the soil. It is the recognition that you are human, that you are doing your best with the tools you have, and that your mistakes are not proof of your unworthiness, but simply proof of your humanity. When you treat yourself with this kindness, you relax. And in that relaxation, real change becomes possible. The second spiritual power is wisdom. And here is where it gets interesting. Wisdom is not intelligence. It is not having a high IQ or a wall full of degrees. It is certainly not about collecting more information or having strong opinions about politics or the news. In fact, wisdom often involves having fewer opinions, not more. Wisdom is the power of seeing clearly. It is the ability to cut through the fog of confusion that clouds most of our daily decisions. You know those moments when you are incredibly upset about something, perhaps a comment someone made, or a minor failure at work, and you feel like the world is ending. Your heart races, your stomach churns, and you lose sleep. Then, a week later, or a month later, you look back and realize it wasn't nearly as important as you thought. You wonder, why did I let that consume me? Wisdom is having that week later perspective available to you right now, in the heat of the moment. It is the ability to fast forward through the drama and see what really matters. It is the cool breeze that blows away the smoke of reactivity. Wisdom also means recognizing the fundamental difference between what is actually happening and the stories your mind tells you about what is happening. This distinction is crucial. It is the root of what we might call a natural meditation for anxiety. Let's look at how this plays out. Your boss sends you a short email Can we talk tomorrow at 10? That is the fact. That is the raw data. But your mind doesn't stop there. In a nanosecond, your mind spins a story. He's mad. He didn't use an exclamation point. He's going to fire me. I made a mistake on that report. I'm going to lose my apartment. I'll have to move back in with my parents. Suddenly, your body is reacting to a catastrophe that hasn't happened. Your palms are sweating. Your chest is tight. You are living in a nightmare of your own creation. Wisdom is the power that steps in and says, wait, what is actually true right now? The truth is, I received an email asking for a meeting. That is all. The rest is a story. Wisdom sees these mental movies for what they are, just thoughts, not facts, just projections, not reality. This doesn't mean you become naive or stop paying attention to real signals. If there are real issues to address, wisdom addresses them, but it addresses the actual issue, not the imaginary monster. It means you stop exhausting yourself by reacting to phantom problems. You stop paying interest on a debt you haven't even borrowed yet. When you cultivate this kind of wisdom, you become less reactive. You become harder to offend. You become less fearful. You stop needing to control the world because you can see clearly that the world is just unfolding, and your power lies in how you respond to it, not in forcing it to be different. Together, compassion and wisdom form the two wings of the bird. Compassion opens your heart to the experience. Wisdom keeps you from getting lost in the story. And when these two are present, they prepare the ground for the third, and perhaps most transformative power, which we will explore next. But the third spiritual power is the one that will change everything for you tonight. It is the master key that unlocks the other two. Buddhist masters call it the power of cutting off and letting go, and it is the secret to a kind of freedom that most people spend their entire lives looking for, but never discover, because they are looking in the wrong direction. This power works in exactly the opposite way that our culture teaches us power should work. We are raised in a society that worships addition. From the time we are small children, the message is drilled into us. More is better. To be powerful means to accumulate. To be successful means to gather. Instead of gaining strength by accumulating more, this spiritual power grows by releasing what you don't actually need. It grows by subtraction. Here is what is so revolutionary about this understanding. In almost every area of your life, you are taught the equation of more. More education makes you smarter. More money makes you secure. More achievements make you successful. More possessions make you comfortable. More friends make you popular. The underlying assumption, the invisible script running your life, is always that the solution to any problem is to add something to your life. Are you feeling insecure? The culture says, get more money in the bank. Are you feeling lonely? The culture says, get more friends, go to more parties. Are you feeling unsuccessful? The culture says, get more achievements, get a better title. Are you feeling empty? The culture says, buy something new. This is the treadmill we are all running on. But Zen stories have warned us about this trap for centuries. They suggest something that might sound crazy at first to our modern ears. They suggest that this endless accumulation often creates the very problems it is supposed to solve. The more you have, the more you have to protect. The more you achieve, the more pressure you feel to maintain your achievements. The more you own, the more you worry about losing what you own. What looks like security from the outside often feels like a beautiful prison from the inside. You build walls to keep the world out, but those same walls keep you locked in. Consider how this plays out in the workplace, a place where many of us spend the majority of our waking hours. Someone works incredibly hard to get promoted to a position of high authority. Society calls this gaining power. There is a celebration, there is a raise. But look closer at the actual texture of their days. Now, they have to maintain that image of authority. They have to watch their words more carefully. They have to navigate complex office politics. They are the first to be blamed when things go wrong. They check their emails on vacation. They have more responsibilities, but often they have less actual freedom to be authentic. They have gained external power, the power of the title, but they may have lost internal peace. They have traded their sleep for status. Think about someone you know, perhaps a public figure, or someone in your community who seems to have absolutely everything. They have the perfect job, the ideal relationship that looks like a romance novel, the beautiful home that belongs in a magazine, the impressive social media presence. Now, try to look past the image to their actual daily experience. Are they more relaxed than people with less? Do they worry less? Do they sleep better at night? Or do they seem to be running faster and faster just to keep up with the life they have created? Do they seem terrified of a crack appearing in the perfect facade? This is where the concept of spiritual awakening becomes very practical. It is not about seeing lights or floating in the air. It is the waking up to the realization that you have been trying to quench your thirst by drinking salt water. The more you drink, the thirstier you become. The power of letting go asks you to stop drinking the salt water. It invites you to examine the heavy luggage you are dragging through life and ask, do I actually need this? Do I need this need to be right? Do I need this need to be admired? Do I need this resentment I've been nursing for 10 years? Do I need this anxiety about a future that hasn't happened yet? When you practice the power of cutting off, you are not losing anything of value. You are cutting the strings that bind you. You are cutting off the drain on your energy. You are letting go of the anchor so the boat can finally float. This is why this third power is the secret. Without it, even your compassion and wisdom can become burdens. You might try to be compassionate, but if you can't let go of the outcome, you'll burn out. You might try to be wise, but if you can't let go of your opinion, you'll become rigid. But when you add the power of letting go, suddenly, everything becomes lighter. You can care without carrying. You can love without clutching. You can work without striving. You step off the treadmill and realize the ground was there to support you all along. This is where the three spiritual powers become not just beautiful, abstract ideas floating in the ether, but practical, gritty tools for living in the modern world. When you develop real compassion, you stop needing other people to be different just so you can feel okay. When you cultivate true wisdom, you stop being fooled by the dramatic stories your anxious mind tells you about what you need to be happy. And when you practice the power of letting go, you discover a stunning truth. The things you thought you needed for security were often the very things preventing you from feeling truly secure. Let me give you a contemporary example of how this works, one that might feel very familiar. Imagine someone, let's call him David, who spends hours every day meticulously managing his online image. He is a digital architect of a life that doesn't quite exist. He chooses photos where the lighting hides the shadows under his eyes. He crafts captions that sound witty and effortless, though he spent 20 minutes editing them. He monitors his phone like a stockbroker, watching a crashing market, waiting for the likes and comments to validate his existence. From the outside, this might look like success. Society says David is building his personal brand. He is gaining social currency. He is accumulating what we call social capital. But look at his internal state. From the inside, David is a wreck. He is anxious about whether people approve. He is exhausted from the constant labor of maintaining an image that is slightly shinier than his reality. He is increasingly disconnected from his authentic self because he has traded his soul for an audience. He is a prisoner of his own platform. Now, imagine David discovering these spiritual powers. Imagine him practicing the radical art of letting go. He still uses social media. He doesn't have to throw his phone in the river, but the internal hooking mechanism has been cut. He posts what feels true to him, what brings him joy, or perhaps he shares a struggle honestly. And then Here is the miracle. He puts the phone down and walks away. He releases any expectation about how others will react. He doesn't check the count. He doesn't measure his worth by the digital applause. Suddenly, all that mental energy that was tied up in image maintenance comes rushing back to him. He has his brain back. He is present for his actual life, the taste of his dinner, the sound of his friend's laugh, the feeling of the wind, instead of constantly documenting it for an invisible audience. He feels more connected to himself, and paradoxically, because he is finally being real, he becomes more genuinely connected to others. The wall of the image has crumbled, allowing real human contact to occur. This pattern of holding on versus letting go shows up everywhere once you start looking for it with the lens of Buddhist philosophy. Look at the parent who is so focused on their child's achievements, the grades, the trophies, the college applications that they miss, enjoying their child's actual personality. They are parenting a resume, not a human being. They are holding on to a future outcome so tightly that they are strangling the present relationship. Look at the professionals so busy networking for career advancement, constantly scanning the room for someone more important to talk to, that they forget to appreciate the job they already have and the colleague standing right in front of them. They are climbing a ladder that is leaning against the wrong wall. Look even closer into the mirror of the spiritual seeker, the individual so concerned with appearing spiritual, so attached to being seen as calm or enlightened, that they lose touch with genuine inner peace. They repress their anger because spiritual people don't get angry, and in doing so, they become a pressure cooker of suppressed emotion. This is exactly what Buddhist teachers mean when they say that spiritual power works differently than worldly power. Worldly power is a zero-sum game. It often requires keeping others down to stay up. It thrives on scarcity. If I have the power, you don't. It relies on maintaining control. Spiritual power acts like a candle flame. If I use my candle to light yours, my light does not diminish. In fact, the room gets brighter. Spiritual power grows when you share it. The more compassionate you become, the more compassion you have available to give. It is a well that refills itself. The wiser you grow, the more clearly you see, and your clarity helps others see. The more you practice letting go, the more spacious and free you feel. And your freedom gives others permission to put down their heavy burdens too. But here is the part that might surprise you, and it is crucial for integrating this into your actual life. These three spiritual powers do not require you to retreat from the world. You don't have to quit your job, leave your family, or move to a mountaintop. You can be deeply engaged with your work, your family, your community, and your goals while developing these powers. In fact, you might find that compassion makes you more effective in your relationships because you are actually listening instead of planning your rebuttal. Wisdom helps you make better business decisions because you aren't reacting to fear or ego. And the ability to let go allows you to take appropriate risks and recover more quickly from setbacks because your identity isn't shattered by failure. The question isn't whether you should have ambitions or care about outcomes. Of course you care. You want your children to be safe. You want to do good work. The question is whether you can pursue what matters to you without being enslaved by the need for specific results. Can you work hard for a promotion while holding the result lightly, knowing you will be okay whether you get it or not? Can you love your partner deeply without needing them to change their quirks to suit your preferences? Can you enjoy the beautiful home you have created without constantly comparing it to the neighbor's renovation? This is the middle way that offers a profound rest, a kind of waking deep sleep for the anxious mind. It is the balance between effort and surrender. This is precisely what those families in the French monastery discovered during their summer retreat. They arrived with a dualistic mindset, thinking they needed to choose between being spiritual, which they defined as quiet, serious, and withdrawn, and being engaged with real life, which they experienced as chaotic, loud, and stressful. But as the days passed, washing bowls and walking in the garden, they learned that the three spiritual powers actually make you more present, more effective, and more genuinely helpful in whatever role you are playing. When you have compassion, you stop wasting 50% of your energy trying to change people who don't want to change. You stop fighting reality. Instead, you start being truly useful to them. You become a resource rather than a critic. When you have wisdom, you see through the drama and confusion to what actually matters. You don't get distracted by the noise, you hear the signal. And when you have the power of letting go, you can respond to life from a place of choice rather than being pushed around by circumstances. You are no longer a pinball bouncing off every bumper of emotional reaction. You are the player of the game. The most remarkable thing about these three powers is how they transform leadership. And make no mistake, you are a leader. Whether you are leading a family, a team at work, a community group, or just leading your own life, you are steering a ship. Traditional leadership often operates through fear, control, or the transaction of rewards. Do this, and I'll give you that. Don't do this, or you'll be in trouble. It is exhausting for the leader and diminishing for the led. But when you lead through the spiritual powers, something shifts. Instead of leading through control, you lead through presence. You lead through clarity. You lead through genuine care for others' well-being. People trust this kind of leadership intuitively. We are starved for it. We can sense when a leader, a parent, a boss, a politician is acting from insecurity and ego. We can smell the fear, but we can also sense when action comes from a place of deep stability. We trust the person who doesn't need us to validate them. We follow the person who is clearly seeing the road ahead rather than looking in the mirror. Tonight, however, we are going to focus most deeply on the third power, the power of cutting off and letting go. We focus here not because the other two aren't important. Compassion and wisdom are the sunlight and the soil, but because letting go is the gate. It holds the key to the others. Think about it. Can you be truly compassionate if you are holding onto a grudge? Can you be wise if you are holding onto a rigid opinion? When you learn to release what you don't actually need, you create the space for natural compassion to arise. It was always there, buried under the clutter of your grievances. When you stop grasping so tightly to your preferences, wisdom has room to emerge. It was always there, hidden behind the noise of your demands. The power of letting go is like walking into a hoarded room, a room filled with old newspapers, broken furniture, and boxes of things that haven't been touched in years, and simply clearing it out. You don't have to build a new room. You don't have to paint the walls or install new windows. You just have to remove what is blocking the space. Suddenly, you can see the floor. You can see the light streaming in. You realize the room was beautiful all along. It was just full. Now, we come to the heart of what Zen Buddhism has been teaching for over 2,000 years. And I must warn you, it is something that will probably challenge everything you have been told about how to live a good life. It goes against the grain of our accumulation culture. Most spiritual traditions, most self-help approaches, most therapeutic methods focus on adding something to your experience. They tell you, add more gratitude journaling, add more positive thinking affirmations, add more guided meditation sessions to your calendar, add more self-love protocols, add more boundaries, add more mindfulness to your day. It is always more, more, more. But Buddhist practice works in exactly the opposite direction. It is the path of subtraction. The path to freedom isn't about accumulating more spiritual experiences or collecting more wisdom to put on your trophy shelf. It is about recognizing what you are already carrying that you don't actually need, and gently, with great love, setting it down. Think about it this way. If your house is cluttered, you don't solve the problem by buying more organizing bins or more shelving units. That just organizes the clutter. You solve it by removing what doesn't belong there. Your mind works the same way. You don't find peace by organizing your anxieties. You find peace by realizing you don't have to keep them. This understanding immediately puts Buddhist practice at odds with almost everything our culture teaches about personal development. We are told that the answer to any problem is to get more of something. If you are feeling insecure, the world says, get more achievements. If you are feeling disconnected, the world says, get more social connections. If you are feeling spiritually empty, the world says, get more spiritual practices, read more books, attend more workshops. But what if the real problem isn't that you don't have enough of the right things? What if the problem is that you are carrying too much of the wrong things? Even in spiritual communities, there is often a subtle trap of accumulation. People start collecting teachings like baseball cards. They compare different Zen meditation techniques. They build elaborate spiritual identities around how much they know about Buddhism or how long they can sit in full lotus. But the moment you start thinking, I understand this teaching better than you, or I have mastered this practice, you are moving away from the freedom that the teaching was pointing toward. The medicine becomes another possession to defend rather than a tool for liberation. The masters of the past identified 3 specific mental patterns that create most of our unnecessary suffering. They called these the 3 afflictions, or sometimes the 3 poisons. And once you learn to recognize them, you will start seeing them everywhere. They are not just present in dramatic situations like wars or crimes. They are woven into the tiny, microscopic moments that make up most of your daily experience. The beautiful thing is that you don't have to fight these patterns or eliminate them completely. You just need to see them clearly enough that they lose their power to control your reactions. The first affliction is what Buddhist teaching calls craving, but that word might mislead you. When we hear craving, we think of drug addiction, or a desperate hunger, or intense lust. We think of dramatic, movie script desires. But craving in the Buddhist sense shows up much more subtly than that. It is the low-level hum of I want. Craving is simply the mind's habit of reaching for something different than what is actually here right now. It could be reaching for a different mood. I wish I weren't so tired. It could be reaching for a different response from someone. I wish he would smile at me. It could be reaching for a different outcome to a situation, or even a different version of yourself. Craving also includes what Buddhist psychology calls subtle greed. These are the barely noticeable preferences that seem innocent but gradually accumulate into a heavy burden of always wanting things to be slightly different. You prefer your coffee to be exactly this temperature. You want your commute to take exactly this many minutes. You want your coworkers to be in good moods. You want the weather to match your weekend plans. None of these preferences are wrong. It is not a sin to like hot coffee. But notice how much mental energy goes into managing them. Notice the tightness that arises when the universe doesn't comply with your preferences. Let me share Buddhist stories about how this plays out in real life, in a way that will probably make you smile with recognition. In that same monastery in the hills of Italy, something happened one summer that perfectly illustrates how sticky, subtle craving can be. For years, the dining hall had been furnished with simple, mismatched wooden chairs. They were perfectly functional, though perhaps a bit hard on the back during long meals. Then, a generous donor decided to gift the community a set of new chairs for the tea veranda. These weren't just any chairs. They were beautiful, high-backed wicker armchairs with plush, emerald green velvet cushions. They were soft. They were inviting. They looked like they belonged in a luxury resort, not a simple Zen retreat. Now, remember where we are. This is a monastery. The people here have traveled thousands of miles to practice letting go of material attachments. These are sincere families who have come to learn about finding contentment with what they have. They chant about simplicity every morning. But what happened when those emerald green chairs appeared on the veranda? Suddenly, the behavior of the community shifted. A new ritual emerged. During mealtimes, people would casually arrive 10 or 15 minutes early. They wouldn't run, that would be undignified, but they would walk with a very determined purpose toward the veranda. Families would strategically spread out their belongings, a scarf here, a book there, a water bottle there, to reserve the green chairs for their group. If a family arrived late and found all the green chairs taken, you could see a ripple of disappointment cross their faces. They would sigh. They would look at the people sitting in the soft chairs with a tiny, barely perceptible glint of envy. Then they would drag over the old, hard wooden chairs and sit just a few feet away, but the energy was different. Nobody was being greedy in a dramatic way. Nobody was fighting or shouting, "That's my chair." Nobody was stealing, but there was this subtle reaching, this gentle but persistent preference for the newer, more comfortable option. And here is what is fascinating. Were those green chairs actually that much better? Physically, perhaps they offered 10% more comfort. But mentally, they became symbols. They represented the good spot. The preference wasn't really about physical comfort. It was about the mental comfort of having the best thing available. The suffering didn't come from the wooden chairs being painful. The suffering came from the comparison. It came from the thought, I could be sitting there, but I am stuck here. This same pattern shows up in Zen meditation practice itself. You might start by just wanting to feel a little more peaceful. That seems like a noble desire. But before long, you find yourself preferring certain meditation experiences over others. You crave the sessions where your mind feels like a still lake, and you resist the sessions where your mind feels like a cage of monkeys. You start chasing the good meditation. You want the insights that feel profound. You want the bliss. You begin to crave spiritual experiences, the same way you once craved the green chair. This is craving in its most common form. It is not a roaring fire. It is a constant, low-level itch. It shows up when you are standing in line at the grocery store and you notice that the line next to you seems to be moving faster. You feel that pull, that desire to switch, that irritation that you picked the wrong line. It appears when you are scrolling through social media and comparing your ordinary Tuesday night on the couch to someone else's highlight reel of their vacation in Bali. It emerges when you are having a perfectly pleasant conversation with your partner, but find yourself wishing they were a little funnier, a little more interested in your stories, a little different than they actually are. The exhausting thing about craving isn't that it is evil or sinful, it is that it never stops. It is a thirst that cannot be quenched by drinking. You get the green chair and you feel satisfied for a moment, but then you notice that the sun is in your eyes, so you want to move the chair. Then you notice that the person next to you is talking too loudly, so you want them to be quiet. The mind that is trained to always want something different will find something to want different in any situation, even in paradise. But here is the good news, and it is what makes this practice so gentle. You don't have to fight craving. You don't have to beat yourself up for wanting the green chair. You just have to see it. When you notice your mind reaching for the better seat, you can smile internally and think, "Oh, hello craving, I see you. You want the soft cushion today." When you catch yourself wishing your friend would text you back faster, you can gently recognize, there is that, wanting things to be different. The moment you see craving clearly, it loses its grip on you. You step out of the trance. You realize that you can sit on the wooden chair and be perfectly happy, because your happiness no longer depends on the cushion. You are free. Craving has a particularly sneaky quality that makes it difficult to spot, even for experienced practitioners. It is a master of disguise. Its favorite costume is the costume of necessity. Your mind is an excellent lawyer. It will argue, with great conviction and logical evidence, that you absolutely need certain things to be a specific way in order to be okay. It will tell you that you need that particular parking spot right in front of the store entrance because it is raining and you are tired. It will tell you that you need that specific outcome to the meeting because your reputation depends on it. It will tell you that you need your friend to respond to your text with enthusiastic emojis, because a simple okay feels like a rejection. But if you pause and look closely, if you bring the microscope of awareness to these moments, you will notice something revealing. Most of what your mind labels as needs are actually just preferences that have gotten a little too demanding. They are preferences that have put on a suit of armor and started shouting. There is a vast difference between a preference and a demand. A preference says, "I would like the sun to shine on my picnic today." That is a natural, healthy human feeling. But a demand says, "The sun must shine today, and if it rains, this day is ruined. The universe is against me, and I will be miserable." The suffering doesn't come from preferring the Sunday. The suffering comes from the demand. It comes from the tightness in your chest that refuses to accept the rain. The practice we are cultivating here isn't about eliminating all your preferences. You don't have to become a robot who doesn't care whether you eat delicious food or tasteless gruel. You don't have to pretend you don't care if your team wins or loses. That would be a form of spiritual repression. The practice is about holding your preferences lightly. Imagine you are holding a small bird in your hand. If you grip it too tightly, if you turn your preference into a demand, you crush the life out of it. But if you open your hand completely and say, "I don't care," the bird flies away and you lose the connection. The secret is to cup your hand gently. You cherish the bird. You enjoy its presence, but you don't clutch it. If it stays, wonderful. If it flies away, you can watch it go with a sense of peace, because you were never squeezing it in the first place. This pattern of tight gripping shows up in the most subtle ways throughout your day. It shows up when you are driving. You have a preference for green lights. We all do. But watch what happens when the light turns yellow. Do you feel a sudden spike of adrenaline? Do you speed up, risking safety to beat the red? Or do you slam on the brakes and spend the next 60 seconds stewing in frustration, tapping your fingers on the steering wheel, mentally pushing the car in front of you? That is the need disguise. Your mind has convinced you that you need to be through that intersection now. But in reality, you are just sitting in a car, breathing, safe, waiting for a color to change. The only suffering is the resistance to the waiting. It appears when you are in a conversation. You have a preference for being understood. But what happens when someone misunderstands you? Do you immediately jump to defend yourself? Does your voice get louder? Do you interrupt them to correct the record? That is the craving for control, disguising itself as a need for clarity. It emerges even in your sleep habits. You lie in bed, and you have a very strong preference for falling asleep quickly. But the more you tell yourself, "I need to sleep right now," the more awake you become. The demand for sleep actually creates the tension that prevents deep sleep. The mind that says, "I must not be awake," is a mind at war with reality, and a mind at war cannot rest. The antidote to this subtle craving is a gentle sense of humor and curiosity. When you catch your mind stomping its feet because the internet is slow, you can say, "Oh, look at that. I've turned a slow loading page into a survival emergency." When you catch yourself feeling slighted because someone didn't laugh at your joke, you can say, "Ah, I really wanted that validation. That's okay. It's just a preference." This shift in perspective is profound. It moves you from being a victim of circumstance, "I can't be happy because it's raining," to being a master of your own experience. "I would prefer sun, but I can find peace in the rain." You stop exhausting yourself trying to arrange the furniture of the world to match your internal blueprint. You learn to sit comfortably on whatever furniture is available. The second affliction is anger. But again, we need to be careful with our definitions, because Buddhist stories often use this word to mean something much broader than just red-faced rage or shouting matches. In the Buddhist understanding, anger is simply pushing away energy. It is resistance. It is the mental act of saying no to what is actually happening. This resistance shows up in 1,000 disguises. It shows up as irritation when someone is walking too slowly on the sidewalk in front of you. It shows up as a heavy sigh when your computer freezes. It shows up as annoyance when a fly buzzes around your room. It shows up as frustration when your carefully laid plans get disrupted by a sudden rainstorm. Anger is often the flip side of the coin of craving. They are partners in crime. When you can't have what you want, craving, the mind switches instantly to pushing away what you don't want. Anger. When the green chair isn't available, anger arises toward the person sitting in it. When the traffic isn't moving, anger arises toward the construction crew. When your spiritual awakening doesn't happen on your schedule, anger arises toward the practice itself. That's right. Anger even infiltrates our spiritual lives. There is a specific type of irritation known as spiritual anger. It is the frustration you feel when you sit down to meditate and your mind won't settle down. You think, I shouldn't be thinking about my grocery list. I should be peaceful. You get angry at your own thoughts. You get irritated with your own imperfection. You might even feel resentful that you have to practice at all, wishing you could just be naturally enlightened like the masters in the stories. This anger toward your own progress becomes a new obstacle, a second wall you build in front of the first wall. The problem with anger isn't just that it might hurt other people, though it certainly can. The problem is what it does to you. Holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intention of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned first. The heat of the anger scorches your own hand long before it ever reaches its target. Every moment you spend mentally arguing with reality. This shouldn't be happening. He shouldn't have said, that is a moment you are unavailable for life. You are locked in a room with your resistance, while the actual world waits outside. But like craving, anger is not something to be eliminated by force. You cannot get angry at your anger and expect it to go away. That just adds more fuel to the fire. The practice is to meet anger with curiosity. Oh, interesting. There is a lot of heat here. There is a lot of pushing away. What is this anger trying to protect? What does it think needs to be defended? When you can observe the fire without throwing more logs on it, it naturally burns down to embers and eventually turns to ash. The third affliction is ignorance. This one might surprise you, because in English, ignorance sounds like an insult. It sounds like we are calling someone stupid or uneducated. But Buddhist ignorance has nothing to do with how many books you've read or whether you know state capitals. It is not a lack of data. It is a specific kind of confusion about how reality works. Ignorance is the filter that makes you mistake your thoughts for facts. It is the delusion that makes you treat your emotions as emergencies and your opinions as absolute truths. Ignorance is the part of your mind that creates solid, permanent stories out of fluid, temporary events. It shows up when you take your worried thoughts about the future as if they were accurate predictions from a crystal ball. You think, I'm going to fail this presentation, and ignorance says, yes, that is a fact. It appears when you assume that other people's behavior is primarily about you. Someone cuts you off in traffic, and ignorance says, he did that to disrespect me. In reality, he probably didn't even see you, or he was rushing to the hospital. Ignorance makes you the center of a movie that isn't actually about you. Perhaps the most common form of ignorance is the failure to recognize the gap between what happens and what you make it mean. Your friend doesn't call you on your birthday. That is the event. Ignorance bridges the gap instantly with a story. She doesn't care about me anymore. Our friendship is over. You suffer not because of the missing call, but because of the story of abandonment you have constructed around it. Ignorance also includes not understanding the impermanent nature of all experience. When you are sad, ignorance tells you, this sadness will last forever. This is who I am now. When you are stuck, ignorance says, I will never get unstuck. It freezes the flowing river of life into blocks of ice and then complains that it is cold. These three afflictions, craving, anger, and ignorance, work together like a complex gear system to manufacture most of the drama in your life. You want something to be different, craving. You resist what is actually happening, anger. And you don't see that you are the one creating the struggle, ignorance. But just recognizing this machinery is the beginning of dismantling it. You don't need a wrench. You just need the light of awareness. When you shine a light on the gears, you can see how they turn. And once you see how they turn, you can choose not to put your hand in them. Let me tell you another story from that same monastery, one that illuminates how these afflictions weave themselves into even the most innocent aspects of our lives. This story is about something as simple as a teacup, but it contains a lesson as deep as the ocean. For many years, the monastery kitchen was a place of communal flow. There was a large shelf filled with mismatched mugs and cups, some chipped, some painted with flowers, some plain white. When it was time for tea, a monk would simply walk to the shelf, pick up whatever cup was closest to his hand, fill it, drink, wash it, and return it to the shelf. There was a beautiful freedom in this. No cup belonged to anyone. Every cup belonged to everyone. If a cup broke, it was just a broken cup. If a cup was dirty, someone washed it. There was no mine and no yours. There was just the function of drinking tea. Then, one Christmas, a well-meaning friend of the community decided to do something thoughtful. They bought a beautiful set of matching ceramic mugs, and they paid to have each monk's name engraved on one. Brother Thomas got a cup that said Thomas. Brother David got a cup that said David. It was a lovely gesture, intended to make each person feel special and seen. But the moment those engraved cups were placed on the shelf, the atmosphere in the monastery subtly shifted. The age of innocence had ended, and the age of ownership had begun. Now, when Brother Thomas walked into the kitchen for tea, he didn't just reach for a cup. He scanned the shelf for his cup. If he couldn't find it immediately, a tiny ripple of anxiety would move through his chest. Where is my cup? He would wonder. Did someone else take it? Did someone break it? One day, Brother Thomas walked into the common room and saw Brother David drinking from the cup that said Thomas. In the past, this would have meant nothing. But now, a small spike of irritation arose. A thought bubbled up. That's my cup. Why is he using my cup? Does he not respect my property? Notice what happened here. The tea tasted exactly the same. The cup performed its function of holding liquid exactly as well as the old anonymous cups. Physically, nothing had changed except a few etched letters on clay. But mentally, everything had changed. The concept of mine had entered the room, and with it came the shadow of mine, which is the fear of loss and the potential for conflict. Before the names were engraved, there was no problem. There was just tea. Now, there was a territory to defend. There was something to keep track of. There was something to worry about. The monk didn't want to be possessive. He had taken vows of poverty. But the mind's habit of attachment latched onto that name like a burr on a wool sweater. This story is a perfect mirror for our lives. It illustrates how identity and ownership create suffering even in the most innocent situations. The monk didn't crave the cup because it was made of gold. He craved it because it carried his name. He suffered not because the cup was damaged, but because his idea of ownership was challenged. Think about how this plays out in your own life. You think that acquiring things will make you feel secure and happy. You buy the house, the car, the new phone, but often it is the sense of ownership itself that creates the background hum of anxiety. Once you own the house, you have to worry about the roof leaking. Once you own the car, you have to worry about the scratch on the door. Once you own the new phone, you have to worry about dropping it. The very things you acquire to increase your security often become new sources of insecurity. You become the custodian of your possessions. You end up serving them rather than them serving you. But the story goes deeper than just material things. This is where the concept of guided meditation for daily life really applies. We do the exact same thing with our ideas, our opinions, and our roles. we engrave our names on them. We say, "This is my opinion." And suddenly, if someone disagrees with it, we feel personally attacked. We say, "This is my way of doing the dishes." And suddenly, if someone does it differently, we feel annoyed. We say, "This is my spiritual practice." And suddenly, we feel superior to those who practice differently. Each time the mind claims ownership, each time it stamps mine on a passing cloud of experience, it creates a vulnerability. It creates a boundary that must be defended. The power of cutting off and letting go begins with questioning this entire framework. It asks, what if you could use what you need without the heavy burden of possessing it? What if you could live in your house with gratitude, but without the tight grip of "this is mine"? What if you could hold your opinions lightly, ready to release them if a better truth comes along? What if you could treat your life like the communal cup, something to be used with joy and care, but not something to be clutched in fear? This brings us to one of the most challenging, yet, ultimately, most liberating aspects of the practice of letting go, releasing your ideas about who you are. This sounds counterintuitive. We spend our whole lives building an identity. We are told to find ourselves, build our brand, and know who we are. But most people spend enormous amounts of energy not just building, but frantically maintaining and defending these self-concepts. You have a list of "I am" statements that you carry around like a wallet full of ID cards. I am someone who has it together. I am a good parent. I am successful. I am a hard worker. I am spiritual. I am someone who doesn't get rattled by small things. These self-concepts might seem positive. You might ask, what is wrong with believing I am a good parent? Nothing is wrong with the behavior of good parenting, but the identity, the rigid mental label, "I am a good parent," becomes a prison the moment you need to defend it. What happens when the good parent makes a mistake? What happens when you lose your temper, or forget an appointment, or your child struggles in school? If you are just a person parenting a child, you can say, "Oops, I made a mistake. I will fix it." You can apologize and move on. But if your core identity is "I am the perfect parent," then that mistake isn't just a mistake. It is an existential threat. It shatters your sense of self. You react with defensiveness. "It wasn't my fault." You react with denial, or you collapse into shame. You are no longer dealing with the actual situation, the forgotten appointment, or the spilled milk. You are dealing with the crisis of your identity crumbling. You spend precious energy patching up your ego instead of responding to your child. The trap of spiritual identity is particularly sneaky because it wears such a beautiful costume. It seems so positive. You might pride yourself on being someone who meditates every day, someone who understands deep philosophy, someone who doesn't get caught up in material things like those other people. But the moment you are attached to being the spiritual person, you have just traded one form of ego for another. You have traded a business suit for a meditation robe, but the man inside is still insecure. You become invested in maintaining your image as someone who has transcended ordinary concerns. This creates a new, subtle form of suffering. You start monitoring yourself constantly. Did I look peaceful enough? Did my reaction show enough wisdom? When you feel petty, or jealous, or angry because you are human, and you will feel these things, you feel a double layer of pain. First, the anger itself, and second, the shame that spiritual people shouldn't feel anger. You end up repressing your humanity to protect your divinity. The wisdom we are exploring tonight invites you to hold even your self-concepts lightly. It asks you to become fluid. Yes, you might be a parent, but that is not all you are. You are also a mystery that is constantly unfolding. Yes, you might be successful in your career, but you don't need to be successful in every single area of life to be worthy of breath. Yes, you have spiritual interests, but you don't need to be perfectly peaceful to benefit from the practice. When you stop defending rigid ideas about who you are, You become free to respond authentically to each moment. You can be strong when strength is needed, and soft when softness is needed. You don't have to act like a strong person or like a nice person. You just act. This practice becomes especially critical in our current cultural moment. We live in the age of the personal brand. Social media encourages us to curate a museum of our lives. We select the best photos, the wisest quotes, the most flattering angles. We are under immense pressure to present a consistent, successful, impressive version of ourselves to the world. But this curation creates a dangerous gap. The gap between the avatar you present online and the human you are in your kitchen. The avatar is always smiling, always wise, always on vacation. The human is sometimes tired, sometimes confused, sometimes lonely. The energy it takes to maintain the avatar drains the life out of the human. You feel like a fraud in your own life. The practice of letting go of fixed self-concepts doesn't mean you become a blob with no personality. It doesn't mean you stop having values or goals. It means becoming like water. Water takes the shape of whatever vessel it is in a cup, a river, an ocean, but it never forgets it is water. It doesn't have to fight to prove it is wet. It means being comfortable with not knowing. When someone asks, "Who are you?" it is okay to internally smile and think, "I am discovering that right now." It means you don't have to carry the heavy statue of yourself on your back everywhere you go. You can set it down. You can just be a presence, witnessing this moment, free to be whoever the moment requires you to be. Now, let me share a story that illustrates the ultimate freedom that comes from this practice. It is one of the classic Zen stories that has been passed down for generations because it touches something universal in the human heart. There was once a man named Bakula who had achieved remarkable success in the business world of his time. He was not just comfortable, he was vastly wealthy. He owned multiple properties, acres of fertile land, and herds of cattle. He had chests filled with gold and fine silks. By every external measure, by the measuring stick of both his society and ours, he had won the game. He had achieved the kind of power and security that most people spend their entire lives chasing, often sacrificing their health and relationships to catch. But despite all his external success, Bakula felt a deep, gnawing sense of emptiness. It was a hunger that no amount of gold could feed. The more he accumulated, the more he felt the heavy weight of managing it. His wealth, instead of providing freedom, had become a complex system of cages. He had to hire guards to watch the gold. He had to hire accountants to count the coins. He had to manage the workers who tended the land. He worried about droughts destroying his crops. He worried about thieves scaling his walls. His mind was never in the present moment. It was always patrolling the borders of his empire, scanning for threats. So, one day, he made a decision that his friends and family considered absolutely insane. He decided to trade his complexity for simplicity. He gave away his wealth to his family and the poor. He walked out of his luxurious estate, left his soft beds and fine foods, and entered the forest to live as a monk, with nothing but a robe and a bowl. He wanted to conduct an experiment. He wanted to discover what life would feel like without the burden of ownership, without the constant background hum of anxiety about things that could be lost, stolen, or damaged. One night, not long after he had joined the order, Bakula was sitting quietly in meditation under a tree. The forest was dark. The ground was hard. He had no mosquito net, no security system, no bank account. Suddenly, in the middle of the silence, he experienced a wave of joy so profound, so overwhelming, that he couldn't contain it. He threw his head back and shouted out loud into the night, "Oh, what happiness! What incredible happiness! What bliss!" His exclamation was so loud and enthusiastic that it disturbed the other monks meditating nearby. They were concerned. They whispered to each other, "Poor Bakula, he has lost his mind. He is remembering his old life of luxury and realizing what a mistake he made. He is shouting because he is having a breakdown over losing his fortune." They went to the teacher and said, "You must help Bakula. He is shouting about happiness, but we think he is suffering from regret." The teacher called Bakula to him the next morning. "Bakula," he asked, gently, "why were you disturbing the peace of the forest last night? Why were you shouting?" Bakula bowed and smiled, his face radiating a light that hadn't been there when he was a rich merchant. "Master," he said, "I was shouting because I finally understand. When I was a rich man, I had guards at every door and soldiers at every gate. I slept in the softest bed in the kingdom, but I never truly slept. I was always awake, listening for intruders, worrying about my enemies, terrified of losing what I had gathered. I had everything, but I had no peace." He took a deep breath and continued, "But last night, sitting alone in the forest, I realized that for the first time in my life, I own nothing that can be lost. I have no house that needs maintenance. I have no car that needs repairs. I have no stocks that can crash. I have no reputation that needs defending. I have no bills to pay and no insurance premiums to worry about. The thieves can come, but they will find nothing to steal. For the first time, I am not a jailer of my own life." He looked at the teacher with tears of gratitude in his eyes. "I am truly wealthy now. Wealthy in freedom, wealthy in safety, wealthy in the ability to be completely present without the constant background noise of anxiety. That is why I shouted. I was celebrating my liberation." This story is extreme, of course. It is not suggesting that you should go home tomorrow, sell your house, empty your bank account, and move to the woods. That is not the lesson for most of us. The lesson is about your relationship with ownership. The story is pointing to a different definition of wealth. Bakula didn't find happiness in poverty. He found happiness in freedom. He found it in the absence of the mental burden. Think about your own relationship with your possessions for a moment. How much mental RAM, how much computing power is currently being used to track your stuff? How much energy do you spend organizing, cleaning, maintaining, insuring, and upgrading your things? And deeper than that, how much of your sense of security is outsourced to these objects? How much of your identity is wrapped up in the zip code where you live, the logo on your car, or the brand of your clothes? The practice of cutting off and letting go invites you to experiment with holding all of this more lightly. You can still have the house, but can you live in it without being owned by it? Can you enjoy the car without it becoming a statement about your worth? Can you appreciate your savings account without letting the number determine your level of inner peace? It invites you to discover the Bakula moment in your own life, that moment of realizing that your true safety doesn't come from the walls you build to keep the world out, but from the openness that allows the world to flow through. It is the realization that you are already whole, regardless of what you have in your pocket. This same liberating principle of non-ownership applies to the most intimate territory of all, your own mind. This is where the practice becomes truly transformative. Most people treat their thoughts as if they own them, and their emotions as if they define them. They treat the weather of their minds as if they are the weather itself. Notice the language we use. We say, "I am anxious." We use the verb to be, identifying our entire existence with a temporary feeling. We say, "I am angry," fusing our identity with a passing reaction. We say, "I think this situation is terrible," and we believe that thought belongs to us, that it is a fact we have authored and must defend. But what if you shifted your relationship to these internal events? What if you applied the lesson of the cup? What if you stopped engraving your name on every thought that floats through your awareness? The practice invites you to change your internal language. Instead of saying, "I am anxious," try saying, "I notice anxiety arising." Do you feel the difference? In the first statement, you are the anxiety. You are drowning in it. In the second statement, you are the vast space in which the anxiety is happening. You are the sky, and the anxiety is just a cloud passing through. Instead of, I am angry, try, I notice anger moving through me. Suddenly, there is distance. There is perspective. You are not the anger. You are the witness of the anger. You don't have to suppress it or push it away, but you also don't have to let it drive the car. Instead of, I am a failure because I made a mistake, try, I notice a critical thought arising that says, I am a failure. You treat the thought like a sound in the street, just something happening, not a definitive truth about your soul. When you can observe your mental and emotional experiences without claiming ownership of them, without saying, this is me, something remarkable happens. You unlock the door to equanimity. Equanimity is often misunderstood as emotional numbness or indifference. People think it means becoming a zombie who doesn't feel anything, but true equanimity is the exact opposite. It is the ability to feel everything, the full spectrum of human emotion, without being destroyed by it. It is the capacity to remain stable and responsive, regardless of the changing mental weather. You can feel sadness deeply, letting it wash through you like a cleansing rain, without drowning in the story that life is tragic. You can experience the heat of anger, letting it inform you about a boundary that was crossed, without being consumed by the urge to attack. You can have worried thoughts about the future, seeing them as protective mechanisms of the brain, without believing their terrifying predictions are facts. This practice of letting go extends outward into your most cherished roles and relationships. This is often the hardest place to practice, but it is also where love becomes most pure. You might be a parent, and that is a sacred role, but you can practice what some wise teachers call non-parenting. This doesn't mean neglect. It means caring deeply for your child while letting go of the ownership of their destiny. It means realizing that your child is not your project, your trophy, or your second chance at life. They are their own mystery. You guide them, you love them, you protect them, but you do not own their journey. When you release the tight grip of ownership, you make space for them to become who they actually are, rather than who you need them to be to validate your parenting. You might be in a romantic relationship. Often, we treat our partners as possessions. My husband, my wife. We have a script for how they should act to make us happy. But you can love someone fully while not needing them to be different than they are right now. You can appreciate their presence without demanding they fulfill your every emotional need. This is the shift from, I need you, to I cherish you. You might be an employee or a leader. You can engage fully with your work, bringing all your creativity and passion while not letting your job performance define your worth as a human being. You can work hard for a goal without being destroyed if the result is different than you planned. This doesn't mean becoming detached, cold, or uncaring. It actually means the opposite. It means caring so deeply that you are willing to let the people in your life be free. It means loving them enough to let them be themselves, rather than actors in your play. It means engaging so fully with your responsibilities that you respond to what is actually needed in the moment, rather than defending your position or maintaining your image. The power of cutting off and letting go ultimately gives you access to what Buddhist teachers call your ordinary mind. This isn't a mystical state reserved for masters. It is simply the capacity to be completely present and responsive to whatever is actually happening, right now, without the layer of mental commentary, resistance, or grasping that usually colors every experience. In this state of ordinary mind, washing dishes becomes as satisfying as watching a movie. Having a difficult conversation becomes as peaceful as sitting in a garden. Dealing with a crisis becomes as spacious as a retreat. This isn't about becoming perfect. It isn't about eliminating all your preferences and desires. It is about holding everything, your things, your thoughts, your roles, your life lightly enough that nothing can destroy your fundamental peace. You can still have goals, but you are not enslaved by the need to achieve them to be happy. You can still have preferences, but you are not devastated when reality doesn't match them. You can still care deeply about people and causes, but you are not crushed when things don't go the way you hoped. The practice develops gradually. It is like learning to hold water in your hands. At first, you grip tightly, trying to control the water, and it slips through your fingers. You get frustrated, but as you learn to cup your hands gently, to hold without grasping, to create a shape that receives rather than demands, the water stays exactly where it needs to be. This is how you learn to hold your entire life, gently, lovingly, but without the tight grip that creates suffering. There is a way of understanding yourself that will completely change how you navigate the ups and downs of your daily life. It begins with a shift in imagination. I want you to imagine, just for a moment, that you are like a tree. I don't mean this in some mystical, abstract, or purely metaphorical sense. I mean it in the most practical, biological way possible. Consider a tree standing in a forest. Its shape, its health, and its growth are determined by two fundamental forces. First, there is the seed. The seed contains the history of its ancestors. It dictates whether the tree will have needles or broad leaves, whether it will grow tall and straight or low and wide. It carries the genetic wisdom of every tree that came before it. Second, there is the environment. The soil quality, the amount of rain, the angle of the sun, the wind, and the other plants growing nearby. The tree is a conversation between its seed and its soil. You are exactly the same. Right now, as you are listening to this, you are the living result of two powerful currents colliding. You are being shaped by what you inherited from your seed, your ancestry, and what you are encountering in your environment. Buddhist wisdom recognizes that understanding this interplay between your inherited nature and your current environment is essential for finding peace. Without this understanding, you often feel like a victim. You feel pushed around by moods you didn't ask for, reactions you can't seem to control, and patterns that keep repeating despite your best intentions. You blame yourself for things that are not your fault, and you try to control things that are not in your power. But when you see clearly how you are being influenced, how the seed and the soil are working together, you can stop fighting yourself. You can start making conscious choices about the kind of tree you want to become. In Buddhist teaching, what you inherited is called your individual retribution. That sounds like a harsh, judgmental term in English, perhaps implying punishment, but in the original language, it simply means the fruit of past actions. It refers to the specific combination of traits, tendencies, physical characteristics, and emotional patterns that were passed down to you through your family line. This inheritance is profound. It includes the obvious things, of course. You have your father's nose, you have your mother's eye color, but it goes much deeper into the invisible architecture of your being. You inherited emotional patterns from your parents. You inherited ways of processing stress from your grandparents. You inherited survival strategies that your great-grandparents developed to navigate wars, famines, or personal tragedies. This isn't just spiritual theory. Modern science calls this epigenetics. We now know that trauma and resilience can be passed down through generations, etched into the way our genes express themselves. Consider how this inheritance shows up in your life in unexpected ways. Maybe you find yourself humming a melody while you cook, and you realize it's the same song your grandmother used to sing, even though you haven't heard it in 20 years. Or perhaps you are in a heated argument, and suddenly your hands move in a sharp, dismissive gesture, and you freeze because you realize those are your father's hands. You are using his gesture. Or you might discover that your approach to solving problems, that stubborn, quiet determination you have, mirrors your mother's way of thinking through challenges, even when you spent years trying to be different from her. You are carrying a library of ancestors within your cells. You are the current chapter in a very long story. Most of us have a complicated relationship with this inheritance. We might be proud of the good parts, the intelligence, the artistic talent, the physical strength, but we often feel ashamed of the difficult parts, the tendency toward anxiety, the quick temper, the depressive slumps. We try to cut off those parts. We try to prune the tree of ourselves to look different. But Buddhist wisdom says, you cannot prune your roots. You can only understand them. And in understanding them, you change your relationship to them. Let me share what happened in that French monastery during one of their summer retreats that perfectly illustrates how healing this recognition can be. It was a simple exercise, yet it brought tears to many eyes and laughter to the dining hall. At lunch one day, the teacher gave a prompt. He asked each person to turn to their neighbor and share one habit they had inherited from their mother and one habit they had inherited from their father. The room buzzed with conversation. The first person to share got so excited that they couldn't stop at just one. They listed several habits, spilling them out like puzzle pieces they had just realized fit together. What emerged was both funny and profound. One woman, a successful executive who often felt stressed by her own need for connection, realized she had her mother's tendency to make friends with strangers everywhere she went. As a child, this had embarrassed her deeply. She would stand in the grocery store rolling her eyes while her mother chatted with the cashier about the price of melons. But now she realized that this same trait was the secret to her success in business. It was her ability to build rapport. What she had judged as annoying was actually a gift of openness. Another man noticed he had his father's creative, somewhat chaotic approach to problem solving. His father would fix anything with duct tape and wire. The son realized he did the same thing in his software engineering job, finding unusual, duct tape solutions to code problems that no one else could solve. He had inherited a creative spirit that showed up in everything, connecting him to his ancestors in ways that brought him joy rather than burden. Someone else recognized their grandmother's way of moving through the world with quiet dignity, a specific way of holding her spine straight, even when tired, a quality she had absorbed without even realizing it. The teacher who was leading this exercise had his own story to share, and it was one of deep vulnerability. He recognized in himself his mother's intense social nature. She was a woman who would invite the mailman in for coffee. As a shy, introverted boy, this had mortified him. He had wanted to hide. But now, as a teacher leading a community, he saw that his ability to welcome new students, to make them feel at home instantly, was her gift working through him. From his father, he had inherited a meticulous, almost obsessive attention to detail. His father would spend hours polishing a single piece of wood. The teacher realized this was the source of his own dedication to the details of the practice, his ability to craft a Dharma talk with precision, his care in arranging the altar. These inherited strategies aren't right or wrong. They are simply the wisdom your family developed to survive and flourish in their particular circumstances. Your anxiety might be the echo of a grandmother who needed to be hyper-vigilant to protect her children during a war. Your frugality might be the legacy of a grandfather who survived the Great Depression. Here is what is beautiful about this understanding. Once you recognize these inherited patterns, you can start to appreciate them instead of fighting them. You begin to see that the qualities you sometimes struggle with, maybe your tendency to worry like your mother or your stubbornness like your father, are actually expressions of deeper strength. The worry might be inherited sensitivity and caring that just needs a new direction. The stubbornness might be inherited determination and persistence that helped your family survive. This recognition can be profoundly healing, especially if you have spent years trying to be completely different from your family. Many of us build our identities on not being them. I will never be like my mother. I will never do what my father did. But this resistance takes enormous energy. It is like a tree trying to pretend it doesn't have roots. When you stop fighting your inherited nature and start working with it skillfully, you often find that your greatest strengths emerge from the same source as your biggest challenges. You stop being a victim of your genetics and become the conscious gardener of your own inheritance. You can say, "Thank you, ancestors, for this sensitivity. I will use it to be an artist." not to worry. Thank you for this stubbornness. I will use it to finish my degree, not to fight with my neighbors. But your inherited nature, the seed, is only half the story. The other half, and the half where you have immense power right now, is the soil. Buddhist teaching calls this your environmental retribution. It is the ongoing, dynamic influence of everything around you. Like a tree that grows differently, depending on whether it is in a dense, dark forest or an open, sunny field. Whether it gets the gentle morning sun or the harsh afternoon heat, you are constantly being shaped by your environment. And here is what is remarkable, something that most people forget. A tree cannot move. If it is planted in bad soil, it must struggle where it is. But you can move. You can change the soil. You can prune the branches that block your light. You have more control over your environment than you might think. The tree metaphor becomes especially helpful when you consider how trees interact with their surroundings. A tree doesn't just passively receive what the environment gives it. It is an active participant. It releases chemicals to communicate with other trees. It drops leaves that decompose and enrich the soil for its own roots. It provides shelter that creates microclimates. You interact with your environment in similar ways. You are constantly taking in influences and putting out responses. It is a continuous loop. Buddhist teaching recognizes that you interact with your environment through 4 specific channels, which the masters called the 4 nutrients. Just as your physical body needs food to survive, your mind and spirit need these 4 types of nourishment to thrive. But unlike physical food, which you only eat a few times a day, these mental nutrients are constantly flowing into you. You are consuming them every second you are awake, whether you are aware of it or not. The question isn't, are you eating? The question is, what are you eating? Are you consuming toxins that make you sick with anxiety and fear? Or are you consuming vitamins that help you grow in wisdom and peace? The first nutrient is edible food. This seems obvious. It's everything you put in your mouth. But the masters weren't just talking about calories and macros. They were talking about the energy of the food and how it affects your consciousness. When you are well nourished physically, your inherited emotional patterns tend to be more balanced. You have the biological resilience to handle stress. But when you are depleted by sugar, caffeine, or processed substances, your nervous system becomes fragile. Those inherited seeds of anxiety or anger sprout much faster in an inflamed body. It is about recognizing that what you put into your body affects your emotional stability, your ability to concentrate, and your capacity to respond wisely to challenging situations. But let's expand this nutrient to include the subtle food of conversation. The words people speak to you are a form of food. The emotional energy they share is a form of food. If you spend your lunch break with colleagues who spend the entire hour complaining, gossiping, and predicting disaster, you have just eaten a toxic meal. You will walk away feeling heavy, nauseous, and tired, just as if you ate spoiled meat. If you spend time with people who express gratitude, who laugh, who are curious about the world, you have eaten a nourishing meal. You walk away feeling lighter and energized. Think about how different you feel after coffee with a supportive friend versus a meeting with a hostile client. That is the power of the first nutrient. The second nutrient is sensory impressions. This is everything your eyes see, your ears hear, your nose smells, and your skin feels. This is the massive, unending buffet of the modern world. This includes the obvious things: the TV shows you binge watch, the music you blast in your headphones, the podcasts you subscribe to. But it also includes the subtler influences. The lighting in your home, is it harsh or soft? The clutter on your desk, is it chaotic or ordered? The noise level of your neighborhood. Your nervous system is a sponge. It is constantly absorbing these impressions and using them to decide if you are safe or in danger. Here is where it gets interesting, and where you can see how profoundly your environment shapes your inner experience. Most people don't realize how much their daily mood is manufactured by the sensory environment they choose. You might think you are just watching the news to stay informed, but your nervous system doesn't know it's just pixels on a screen. It sees images of fire, conflict, and angry faces, and it interprets them as immediate, physical threats. It floods your body with cortisol. You are sitting on a comfortable sofa, but your body is chemically in a war zone. You might think you are just scrolling through social media to relax, but your mind is bombarded with thousands of images of people who seem richer, prettier, and happier than you. Your mind instantly compares your internal reality to their external show. You end up consuming a diet of inadequacy and envy. This nutrient is particularly dangerous because in our digital age, the food is often engineered to be addictive. The colors, the sounds, the notification pings, they are designed to bypass your wisdom and hook directly into your craving. Consider a Buddhist meditation practitioner who tries to sit in silence but has spent the last 6 hours consuming high-speed, aggressive media. Their mind will be vibrating like a struck bell. The environment they ingested has become the noise in their head. One teacher shared a perfect example of how this works in our modern technological environment, a story that reveals the invisible strings pulling at our desires. There was a senior teacher at the monastery, a man of great calm and practical wisdom, who lived a life of profound simplicity. He had no personal bank account, no credit cards, and no desire for material accumulation. One summer, a rare celestial event was approaching, a blood moon eclipse. The community was excited to view it, but the old telescope in the storage room was misaligned and dusty. So, this teacher took on the task of repairing it. He went to the monastery's shared computer room, a small, sparse office used only for essential communication, and went online. He wasn't shopping. He wasn't browsing for entertainment. He had a very specific, functional purpose: to find a technical manual or a video tutorial on how to collimate the mirrors of a Newtonian telescope. He found a helpful video, watched it for 10 minutes, took notes, and went back to the storage room. He fixed the telescope. That night, the community gathered on the hill, and they watched the moon turn a deep, rusty red. It was a beautiful moment of shared wonder, a moment of pure connection with the cosmos. The task was done. The desire to fix the telescope was fulfilled and extinguished, but the internet did not forget. The next day, the teacher returned to the computer to answer some emails from prospective students. He opened his browser, and he was shocked. Suddenly, the screen was populated with telescopes. Every sidebar, every banner, every pop-up was screaming at him, "Buy this Celestron. Best deals on optics. Upgrade your stargazing experience today." He tried clicking away. He opened a news site, more telescopes. He checked the weather forecast, telescope ads frame the rain clouds. He switched browsers. The telescopes followed him like digital ghosts. It was as if an invisible salesman was following him from room to room, whispering, "Are you sure you don't want another one? How about a bigger one? How about a more expensive one?" This was his first direct, visceral experience of how sophisticated our information environment has become. He realized with a jolt that he was not just using the internet. The internet was using him. It was tracking his attention, analyzing his behavior, and instantly building a profile of his potential desires. Now, fortunately, this teacher was protected by his vows and his lifestyle. He had no money to spend and no interest in acquiring personal property. He could look at these ads with a sense of detachment and amusement. He could see them for what they were: desperate attempts by a machine to generate a craving that didn't exist. But as he sat there, a wave of deep concern washed over him. He thought, "I am an old monk with decades of training in guarding the senses. I can resist this, but what about the others? What about the teenagers who are still forming their identities? What about the exhausted parents who are looking for a moment of relief? What about the lonely people who are looking for connection? This story perfectly illustrates the predatory nature of the sensory nutrient in our modern world. We are swimming in an information environment that is not neutral. It is designed with a single, terrifyingly effective goal: to capture your attention and convert it into consumption. Every click you make, every second you pause on an image, every search term you type is being fed into an algorithm that knows you better than you know yourself. It knows when you are sad. It knows when you are insecure. It knows when you are likely to impulse buy. And it feeds you exactly the sensory impressions that will trigger your specific patterns of craving. If you are not fiercely conscious of this dynamic, you can find yourself being fed a mental diet that increases your anxiety and dissatisfaction without you ever understanding why. You wake up feeling okay. You scroll for 20 minutes, and suddenly you feel inadequate. You feel poor. You feel ugly. You feel boring. Why? Because you have just consumed a concentrated dose of sensory impressions designed to make you feel exactly that way, so that you will buy the solution. This is particularly critical for parents to understand. Children are the most vulnerable to this sensory food poisoning. Their minds are soft wax, waiting to be impressed. They are still developing the executive function to distinguish between an authentic need and an artificially generated desire. When a child plays a free game that is interrupted every 3 minutes by an ad for a better weapon or a cooler skin, they are being trained. They are being conditioned, like Pavlov's dogs, to associate frustration with the lack of a product and relief with the purchase of a product. They are being taught that the solution to any discomfort is external acquisition. This constant bombardment does more than just empty wallets. It fragments the soul. It destroys the capacity for deep sleep and rest, because the mind is kept in a state of constant, low-level arousal. It creates a background hum of wanting that drowns out the quiet voice of contentment. Understanding this gives you the power to protect yourself. You realize that fasting from digital media isn't just about saving time. It is about detoxing your consciousness. It is about choosing to stop eating the poison. You start to curate your sensory diet with the same care you would use to feed a toddler. You choose what enters your eyes and ears. You reclaim the sovereignty of your own attention. The third nutrient is what Buddhist psychology calls volition or intention. This is the driving force of your life. It is the fuel in the engine. It refers to the deep, often unconscious desires that motivate your choices. This is perhaps the most powerful nutrient because it acts like a colored lens over your eyes. It shapes not just what you do, but how you interpret everything that happens to you. It determines what you see and what you miss. Let's look at how this works. If your underlying, unconscious intention is "I need to prove that I am smart," then every conversation becomes a test. You will interpret a neutral question as a challenge to your intelligence. You will interpret silence as disapproval. You will walk through the world scanning for threats to your intellectual status. Your intention creates your reality. If your underlying intention is "I want to be safe and avoid conflict," you will read every room for danger. You will interpret a frown on a stranger's face as a sign that you should be quiet. You will filter out opportunities for adventure because your lens is set to safety first. Most people carry multiple intentions at once, and they are rarely fully conscious of them. You might consciously intend to be a loving parent, while unconsciously intending to prove that you are better than your own mother was. These conflicting intentions create internal friction. They make you tired, but when you clarify your volition, when you consciously choose an intention of kindness, or curiosity, or service, you change the nutrient that feeds your life. If your intention is to learn, then a mistake isn't a failure, it's a lesson. If your intention is to connect, then a difficult conversation isn't a battle, it's a bridge. The fourth and final nutrient is consciousness itself. Specifically, this refers to the collective consciousness of the groups you belong to. We often think of ourselves as isolated islands, but we are more like sponges in a bucket of water. We absorb the color of the water we are in. This is the group mind. You are constantly absorbing the unspoken beliefs, values, fears, and assumptions of the people around you. If you spend your days in a workplace where everyone is cynical, where the basic assumption is management is the enemy and work is misery, you will eventually start to feel cynical, even if you are naturally optimistic. You are breathing in the second-hand smoke of their worldview. If you live in a family where the collective consciousness is fear-based, where the news is always on, and the conversation is always about dangers, illnesses, and crimes, you will absorb that fear. It will settle into your bones. You will start to see the world as a hostile place, not because you have experienced hostility, but because you have marinated in the consciousness of fear. This is why Buddhist teaching emphasizes the supreme importance of Sangha, a community of friends who support your growth toward wisdom and compassion. It is not just about having people to hang out with. It is about survival. It is about surrounding yourself with a consciousness that nourishes the qualities you want to develop. When you are around people who are practicing patience, kindness, and generosity, those qualities become easier for you. It is like swimming with the current. When you are around people who are habitually reactive, critical, or greedy, staying peaceful feels like swimming upstream. You have to use all your energy just to stay in place. This is why seeking out resources like guided meditation or listening to Zen stories is so vital. It is a way of virtually surrounding yourself with a different kind of consciousness, even if you are physically alone. Now, here is the part that gives you real power in this process. Just as you are constantly taking in nourishment from your environment, you are also constantly putting out energy that affects your environment. You are not just a consumer of consciousness, you are a producer of it. Buddhist teaching recognizes three primary ways you influence your surroundings: through your thoughts, your speech, and your bodily actions. This might sound like basic ethics, but it goes deeper. It suggests that your internal state is a form of broadcast. Your thoughts might seem private, sealed inside your skull, but they are actually a form of energy that leaks out and affects the atmosphere. Have you ever walked into a room where two people were sitting in silence, but the air felt thick with tension? They weren't speaking, but their angry thoughts were filling the space. Conversely, have you ever sat next to someone on a bus who said nothing, but whose presence made you feel calmer? That is the power of thought, energy. When you are thinking critical thoughts about the people you are with, they sense it. They might not know the words, but they feel the judgment. They tighten up. They become defensive. When you are thinking appreciative thoughts about someone, they feel that too. They relax. They open up. When you are thinking worried thoughts about the future, you are contributing to the collective smog of anxiety. When you are thinking peaceful thoughts about the present moment, you are acting as a purifier. You are cleaning the air for everyone. This doesn't mean you have to police every thought or force yourself to be artificially positive. That is just another form of violence against yourself. It means recognizing that your mental state matters. It means realizing that by tending to your own garden, by weeding out your own anger and watering your own compassion, you are actually doing a service for the whole neighborhood. Your speech, of course, has obvious power to influence your environment, but most people underestimate just how much their casual conversation shapes the mental atmosphere of their homes, workplaces, and communities. Words are not just puffs of air, they are architects of reality. When you habitually speak about what is wrong, what is missing, and what is threatening, you are training everyone around you to focus on problems and dangers. You are painting the walls of your shared house with the color of anxiety. But when you habitually speak about what is working, what is possible, and what is beautiful, you are training everyone around you to notice opportunities and gifts. This isn't about being artificially positive or ignoring real problems. It is not about toxic positivity. It is about recognizing that your words have the power to direct attention, and attention shapes experience. You can acknowledge difficulties while still orienting towards solutions. You can express concerns while still maintaining hope. You can be honest about challenges while still appreciating what is working. Your bodily actions obviously have the most direct impact on your environment. But the Buddhist understanding of action goes deeper than just the mechanics of movement. It includes the energy and intention behind what you do. You can wash dishes with resentment, slamming the plates and splashing the water, and that physical action will create ripples of stress that everyone in the house can feel. Or you can wash the same dishes with appreciation and care, handling each item with respect, and that same physical action will create an atmosphere of calm. You can listen to someone with the intention of finding flaws in their logic, or with the intention of understanding their heart. The physical behavior, sitting and listening, looks the same from the outside, but the energetic impact is completely different. This is where the tree metaphor becomes really practical. Just as a tree grows toward light and sends its roots toward water, you can consciously orient yourself toward the kinds of nourishment that help you develop your best qualities. And just as a tree provides oxygen and shade for other living things simply by being a healthy tree, you can consciously contribute to an environment that supports the growth of everyone around you. But here is what makes this approach different from typical self-improvement advice. You are not trying to become someone completely different from who you are. You are learning to work skillfully with your inherited nature while creating conditions that bring out your best qualities. A pine tree doesn't try to become an oak tree. It doesn't look at the oak's broad leaves and feel inadequate about its needles. It learns to be the healthiest, most beautiful pine tree it can be in whatever environment it finds itself. It perfects its own nature. This understanding becomes especially important when you realize that you and the people in your life are constantly shaping each other. Your family members, friends, colleagues, and neighbors are all part of your environment, and you are part of theirs. It is a dance of mutual creation. The way you show up affects how they show up, which affects how you show up, in an endless cycle of influence. When you recognize this deep interconnectedness, this web of cause and effect, you start to see that taking care of your own mental state isn't selfish. It is actually a service to everyone around you. When you are peaceful, you make it easier for others to be peaceful. You become a calm anchor in their storm. When you are patient, you make it easier for others to be patient. You lower the temperature of the room. When you are present, you make it easier for others to be present. Your inner work becomes a gift to your community. Let me give you a contemporary example of how this works, one that might happen to you tomorrow. Imagine you are in a meeting at work. The energy is low. Someone starts complaining about a new policy change. The complaint is valid, but the energy behind it is heavy and contagious. You have several options for how to respond, and each one will influence the direction of the conversation and the energy of the group. Option A. You could join the complaining. Yeah, it's terrible. Management doesn't care. This would likely escalate the negative energy, bonding the group through shared victimhood, but leaving everyone feeling more frustrated and powerless. Option B. You could argue with the complainer. Actually, I think it's a good idea. This would likely create conflict, defensiveness, and make the meeting uncomfortable for everyone. Option C. You could ignore the complaining, checking your phone under the table. This might feel personally peaceful, but it withdraws your energy and doesn't help the situation. Or you could choose option D. You could practice what Buddhist philosophy calls skillful response. You could acknowledge the person's concerns while gently redirecting toward what is possible. You might say, "I hear that this change feels challenging and creates extra work. Given that this is the new reality, what do you think would be the most helpful way for us to adapt to it without burning out?" This kind of response doesn't ignore the problem. It doesn't gaslight the person's feelings, but it orients the group towards solutions rather than getting stuck in the mud of complaints. The remarkable thing is that this kind of skillful response often completely changes the energy of a room. People stop venting and start problem solving. They start feeling empowered instead of victimized. They start looking for opportunities instead of just focusing on obstacles. Your way of responding becomes a kind of environmental conditioning that brings out everyone's better qualities. This works in family situations too, often even more powerfully. Imagine your teenager comes home from school in a bad mood. They slam the door. They grunt in response to your greeting. You can respond in ways that escalate the negative energy. "Don't slam the door. Why are you so rude?" which usually leads to a fight. Or you can respond in ways that create space for something different to emerge. If you immediately start asking questions or trying to solve their problems, "What happened? Did you fail the test?" you might increase their resistance. They feel interrogated. But if you can simply be present with them, perhaps just offering a snack and sitting nearby reading a book without needing to change or fix anything, you create an environment of safety. You become the steady tree in their stormy weather. Often, in that space of non-demanding presence, they will eventually open up. They will begin to process their experience and find their own balance. The same principle applies to your relationship with yourself. When you are in a difficult mood or dealing with a challenging situation, you can respond to yourself in ways that make things worse, or in ways that create space for wisdom to emerge. If you immediately start judging your mood, "Why am I so anxious? I shouldn't be feeling this," you create internal conflict. You are fighting a civil war. If you ignore your experience completely, numbing out with distractions, you miss valuable information about what you might need. But if you can be present with your experience without immediately needing to change it, if you can say, "I notice I am feeling sad right now, and that is okay," you create internal conditions where natural wisdom can arise. This is what Buddhist meditation teaches us: to be the host, not the bouncer, of our own house. This brings us to a concept known as mindfulness of inner and outer experience. You are paying attention to what is happening inside you, your thoughts, emotions, physical sensations, and reactions. At the same time, you are paying attention to what is happening around you, the energy of other people, the demands of your environment, the opportunities and challenges that are presenting themselves. With this dual awareness, you can start making conscious choices about how to respond, rather than just reacting automatically, like a reflex. But here is where it gets really interesting, and where the implications ripple out far beyond your own life. Buddhist psychology recognizes that your individual consciousness is always in relationship with collective consciousness. You are not just an isolated individual trying to manage your own experience inside a bubble. You are part of larger systems: your family system, your work system, your community system, your cultural system. Each of these systems has its own patterns, beliefs, and ways of operating, and you are constantly influenced by them and influencing them. This is why personal transformation is never just personal. It is a contribution to the whole. When you change your patterns of thinking, feeling, and responding, you are also changing the patterns of every system you are part of. You are introducing a new variable into the equation. When you become more peaceful, you are contributing to the peace of your family, your workplace, your community. You are lowering the collective blood pressure. When you become more wise, you are contributing to the wisdom of all the groups you belong to. Sometimes this influence is obvious. When you stop engaging in family drama, the family drama often diminishes because it has lost one of its players. It takes two to tug of war. If you drop the rope, the war ends. Sometimes it is subtle. When you start approaching your work with more creativity and less stress, your colleagues might find themselves feeling more creative and less stressed without knowing why. Mirror neurons are real. We catch each other's states, but the influence is always there, rippling out through the interconnected web of relationships that make up your life. This understanding can be both inspiring and overwhelming. It is inspiring because it means that your personal growth work, your spiritual awakening is always contributing to the healing of the world. It gives dignity to your private struggles, but it can be overwhelming because it can feel like you are responsible for everyone else's experience. The key is to remember that you are responsible for your own contribution to the collective consciousness, not for controlling how others respond to that contribution. You cannot make the seed grow. You can only water it. You can be a source of peace without needing everyone around you to be peaceful. You can be a source of wisdom without needing everyone to make wise choices. You can be a source of compassion without needing everyone to be compassionate. Your job is to contribute your best qualities to the collective consciousness and trust that this contribution makes a difference, even when you can't see the results immediately. This is where the tree metaphor becomes especially helpful again. A tree doesn't worry about whether other trees are growing properly. It doesn't stress about whether it is producing enough oxygen to save the planet. It just focuses on its own growth, on sinking its roots deep and reaching toward the light. In doing so, by simply being true to its nature, it naturally contributes to the health of the entire forest. You can approach your life the same way. Focus on your own growth. Focus on your own stability. Trust that this authentic growth serves the well-being of everyone around you. The practical application of this understanding is profound. Instead of trying to control your environment or change other people, which is the recipe for exhaustion, you focus on creating the internal conditions that allow your best qualities to emerge. Instead of waiting for external circumstances to be perfect before you can be peaceful, you cultivate peace as a way of contributing to better external circumstances. Instead of seeing yourself as separate from your surroundings, struggling against the world, you recognize that you and your environment are constantly co-creating each other. This shift in perspective can transform how you approach everything. Your work becomes a place of practice. Your relationships become a place of practice. Your challenges become the raw material for your growth. You start seeing every interaction as an opportunity to practice contributing positive energy to the collective consciousness. You start seeing every difficult situation as an opportunity to practice responding with wisdom rather than just reacting with your inherited patterns. You start seeing every moment as an opportunity to be the kind of person who makes the world a little bit better just by being present. And here is the beautiful paradox. When you stop trying to force your environment to be different and start focusing on being the kind of person who naturally creates positive change, your environment often does become more peaceful, more supportive, and more aligned with your deepest values. Not because you are controlling it with an iron fist, but because you are contributing to it in a way that brings out the best in everyone around you. Once you understand that you are constantly both absorbing nourishment from your environment and contributing to the environment that others experience, a profound responsibility emerges. It is not a heavy burden. It is a creative opportunity. You begin to realize that every space you enter, every conversation you participate in, becomes an opportunity to either add to the collective stress and confusion of the world or to contribute to its peace and clarity. This brings us to the practical art of creating a nourishing environment for yourself. Buddhist wisdom recognizes that different environments naturally cultivate different mental states. It is simple physics of the soul. Spaces that are cluttered, noisy, or chaotic tend to promote restlessness and distraction. It is hard for the mind to settle when the eyes are bouncing off 1,000 objects. Spaces that are clean, quiet, and thoughtfully arranged tend to promote clarity and calm. This doesn't mean you need to live in a sparse white box or turn your home into a museum. It means recognizing that your external world reflects and affects your internal world. Consider creating a corner of your home that feels peaceful and uncluttered. It could be just one chair by a window. It could be a small table with a single flower. When you look at that space, your mind rests. It is a visual anchor. It reminds you to breathe. Consider the influence of natural environments, forests, gardens, bodies of water. These aren't just pretty backdrops, they are tuning forks. When you spend time near them, your nervous system naturally begins to resonate with their frequency. The rhythm of the waves, the stillness of the trees, the vastness of the sky, these things help restore a sense of perspective that is almost impossible to maintain in purely human-made spaces filled with right angles and fluorescent lights. The monastery where these teachings originated exemplifies this principle beautifully. When visitors arrive, they are often struck by what is missing. There are no advertisements on the walls. There are no televisions blaring news in the background. There is no clutter on the surfaces. Rather than creating an elaborate or luxurious environment to impress guests, the monks focused on radical simplicity and natural beauty. The environment itself teaches. It says, "You don't need more to be happy. You just need to be here." There are no swimming pools with slides. There are no entertainment centers. There are no attractions designed to stimulate excitement or pleasure. Instead, there are quiet walking paths that wind through the oaks. There are simple gardens where vegetables grow. There are spaces designed not for distraction, but for contemplation and genuine human connection. This environment challenges our culture's assumption that more options and more entertainment lead to greater happiness. In fact, it proves the opposite. By removing the noise, the signal of life comes through clearly. Many visitors initially feel bored or restless in such a simple environment. They have become addicted to the adrenaline of constant stimulation. They feel the withdrawal symptoms of not checking their phones every 10 minutes. But as they adjust to the slower pace and reduced sensory input, they often discover a quality of contentment and presence that they had forgotten was possible. They learn that the absence of distraction isn't emptiness, it is spaciousness, and in that space, they finally meet themselves. The responsibility for creating nourishing environments becomes even more significant when you consider your role in other people's lives. As a parent, partner, friend, colleague, or community member, you are constantly contributing to the weather of the relationships you inhabit. This is particularly important in family life, where the environmental influences are so constant and intimate. Children are like barometers. They are exquisitely sensitive to the emotional and mental pressure systems of their homes. They absorb not just what their parents say directly to them, the lectures and the rules, but the quality of energy that pervades the living room. If home is a place where people speak kindly to each other, even when they are tired, children learn that kindness is a baseline, not a luxury. If home is a place where problems are approached with curiosity, how do we solve this, rather than reactivity? Who broke this? Children learn that mistakes are manageable, but this influence operates in all relationships. One of the most powerful ways to create a nourishing environment is to embody what Buddhist teaching calls non-reactive presence. This means developing the capacity to remain calm and responsive in situations where others are upset, defensive, or aggressive. It does not mean suppressing your own feelings or becoming a doormat. It does not mean smiling while someone mistreats you. It means keeping your feet on the ground when the wind starts blowing. When you can maintain this kind of presence, you become what some teachers call a non-anxious presence in any group. This is a rare and powerful role. In a family crisis, everyone else might be spinning into panic or blame. But if one person can stay connected to their breath, if one person can refuse to pick up the rope of conflict, the entire dynamic changes. People sense that they don't have to manage your emotional reactions. They don't have to walk on eggshells around you. This gives them space to process their own experiences honestly. They feel safer to be vulnerable. They feel safer to admit mistakes. They feel safer to ask for help. Developing this capacity for non-reactive presence is one of the most practical gifts you can give to your family and your workplace. It doesn't require any special training or credentials. It requires only the willingness to practice staying connected to your compassionate intentions, even when, especially when situations become challenging. Every time you choose to respond to someone's anger with curiosity about what they are really needing, instead of firing back an insult, you are changing the world. Every time you meet someone's defensiveness with patience rather than counterattack, you are breaking a cycle of violence that might have been going on for generations. This practice becomes especially important in our current cultural moment, where polarization and reactivity seem to dominate so many public conversations. We have forgotten how to talk to each other. We listen for opportunities to argue rather than opportunities to learn. Creating nourishing environments for important conversations requires a different approach. It requires prioritizing understanding over being understood. It requires valuing the relationship more than being right. When you can model this kind of engaged, non-reactive dialogue, you make it easier for others to do the same. Humans are mimetic creatures. We mirror the energy we encounter. If you approach someone with defensive argumentation, their brain will instantly prepare for battle. If you approach them with genuine curiosity, their brain will relax into conversation. By holding your own center, you create a gravity field that helps others find theirs. There is something our culture teaches us from the moment we can understand language that might be one of the most exhausting beliefs humans have ever adopted. It is the whisper that says, "You are not enough yet." It tells you that happiness, success, peace, and worthiness all lie just beyond your current state of being. They are waiting for you to become smarter. They are waiting for you to become prettier. They are waiting for you to become more successful, more spiritual, more organized, more confident. This belief drives most people through their entire lives like a carrot dangling in front of a horse. Always moving, always striving, never arriving. Buddhist wisdom offers something revolutionary in our achievement-obsessed world. It offers you permission to simply be. This is not permission to become lazy or stop caring about growth. It is not an excuse to give up. It is permission to recognize that your fundamental worth, your right to exist, your capacity for peace, your ability to contribute, does not depend on constant upgrades. You are enough, exactly as you are right now, to live with dignity. You are enough to love and be loved. You are enough to make a positive difference in the lives of others. This teaching goes against the grain of everything our productivity-focused society tells us. From childhood, we are trained to measure our value by our output. We ask children, "What did you get on your test?" instead of, "What did you enjoy learning?" We ask adults, "What do you do?" instead of, "Who are you?" We celebrate doing, and we ignore being. Even in spiritual circles, there is this subtle pressure to improve, to meditate longer, to be more mindful, to reach some future state of enlightenment. But what if this entire framework is based on a misunderstanding? What if the constant pressure to become more is actually preventing you from experiencing the peace that is available right now? What if the effort to fix yourself is the very thing that keeps you feeling broken? Think of the tree again. Have you ever seen an oak tree that seemed anxious about not being tall enough yet? Have you ever noticed a pine tree comparing itself to a redwood and feeling inadequate? Does a sapling stress about not producing as much oxygen as the mature trees? No. Trees simply grow. They grow at their own pace, in their own way. A tree doesn't need to justify its existence by constantly becoming more than it is. It doesn't need to prove its worth through impressive achievements. It simply needs to be a tree, to sink its roots, to reach for light, to breathe. In doing these simple, natural things, it fulfills its purpose perfectly. You can live the same way. You can sink your roots deep into practices that nourish your soul, rest, nature, connection. You can reach toward whatever brings light to your life, art, service, learning. You can contribute to the well-being of others simply by being present and kind. You don't need to save the world to be worthy of your place in it. You don't need to be perfect to be loved. You don't need to be finished to be whole. This understanding is beautifully demonstrated in places like the monastery where these teachings originated. When families arrive there for a retreat, many come with the same mindset they bring to their corporate jobs. They want a schedule. They want to know the learning outcomes. They want to be productive, even in their relaxation. They expect workshops. They expect intense seminars. They expect to be busy, getting enlightened. But what they find instead is something that initially feels disappointing, even shocking. There is no schedule of entertainment. There are no team-building exercises. There are no events designed to stimulate them. Instead, there are long stretches of unstructured time. There are simple meals eaten in silence. There are quiet hours in the afternoon where nothing is planned. Many visitors initially feel restless. They feel bored. They feel the itch to check their phones, to find something to do, to fill the empty space with noise. They don't know how to value themselves when they aren't producing something. The idea of spending 2 hours just sitting in a garden feels wasteful. It feels indulgent. It feels wrong. But this discomfort is the teacher. It reveals how deeply we have internalized the belief that we must always be doing something to justify our existence. We have forgotten that human beings are not machines designed for output. We are living organisms designed to experience. The monastery teaches the permission to simply be by removing the distractions that usually cover up our existence. Without the constant noise, people are invited to find interest in the boring things. Walking slowly, watching the steam rise from a cup of tea, listening to the wind in the bamboo, and a miracle happens. As the addiction to stimulation fades, the boredom transforms. It stops feeling like emptiness and starts feeling like spaciousness. It stops feeling like a lack of activity and starts feeling like a fullness of presence. People start having conversations that go deeper than, "What do you do for a living?" They start noticing the way the light changes on the mountains. They rediscover the pleasure of eating slowly, tasting the food instead of inhaling it. They realize that doing nothing is actually doing something very important. It is resting in their own being. This permission to simply be doesn't mean you give up on your dreams. It means recognizing that your actions are most powerful when they arise from a place of rest, not a place of panic. When your foundation is solid, when you know you are enough, regardless of what you achieve, your achievements become expressions of joy, not desperate attempts to prove your worth. This teaching becomes especially important in our era of personal branding, where we feel pressured to document and monetize every moment. We are told that if it isn't on social media, it didn't happen. But Buddhist wisdom suggests that the richest moments of life are the ones that are never shared. The private laugh, the quiet tear, the feeling of rain on your face when no one is watching. These moments don't produce content, but they produce contentment. When you give yourself permission to be, rather than constantly trying to become, you often discover that natural growth happens more easily than when you force it. Think of a river. It doesn't try to flow, it just flows. It follows the path of least resistance, moving around obstacles, finding its way to the ocean. It doesn't stress about whether it is flowing fast enough or deep enough. It yields, and in yielding, it is powerful. You can live like the river. You don't have to push yourself to be more loving. Love arises naturally when you are present and relaxed with others. You don't have to force yourself to be wise. Wisdom emerges naturally when you stop creating noise in your own head. This understanding is particularly healing for those who have spent years on the self-improvement treadmill. You try to fix yourself, but the harder you try, the more broken you feel. You learn techniques for happiness, but happiness feels like work. Buddhist teaching suggests that you are already the person you are trying to become. The peace you are looking for is not in the future. It is underneath the noise of your striving. The permission to simply be has profound implications for your relationships. When you aren't trying to fix yourself, you stop trying to fix everyone else. When you accept your own imperfections, you can extend that same grace to your partner, your children, your friends. Instead of loving your partner while secretly hoping they will change, you love them as they are. Instead of parenting from anxiety about your child's future resume, you enjoy who they are today. Instead of friendships based on mutual complaining or mutual improvement, you have friendships based on mutual acceptance. This doesn't mean lowering your standards. It means shifting your focus from what needs to change to what is already good. It means watering the flowers instead of just pulling the weeds. As we near the end of our journey together tonight, there is something essential I want you to understand about this path. This isn't a path of harsh discipline. It isn't a path of perfectionism. It is a path of extraordinary gentleness. Most people approach spiritual practice like a construction project. They bring hard hats and blueprints and jackhammers. They want to demolish their old self and build a new, shiny self. They judge themselves for having thoughts. They get angry at themselves for getting angry. They feel guilty for not being peaceful. But this is just the ego wearing a spiritual costume. It is the same old harshness, just directed at a new target. The true path is different. It is learning to treat yourself the way a loving grandmother treats a small child who is learning to walk. When a child falls down, the grandmother doesn't scold them. She doesn't say, "You failed at walking. You should be ashamed." No, she smiles. She picks them up. She kisses the scraped knee. She says, "That's part of learning. Try again." She knows that falling is not the opposite of walking. Falling is part of walking. You need to develop this grandmother mind toward yourself. When you fall into an old habit, don't beat yourself up. That just adds bruises to the fall. Instead, simply say, I fell. That's okay. I am learning." When you lose your temper, don't spiral into shame. Say, "Wow, I was really triggered. That was painful. Let me offer some kindness to the part of me that is hurting." This gentleness isn't weakness. It is the soil of transformation. You cannot grow when you are under attack, even from yourself. You grow when you feel safe. This approach is crucial when dealing with the deeper layers of healing. As you slow down, old hurts might surface. Grief you didn't have time to feel. Fears you pushed away. The temptation is to shove them back down, but the invitation is to develop the mother mind, the capacity to hold your own pain with the same tenderness a mother holds a crying infant. You don't try to fix the baby instantly. You don't explain logic to the baby. You just hold it. You let it cry. You say, "I am here. You are safe." Often, that quality of gentle, non-judgmental attention is exactly what your pain has been waiting for. It doesn't need to be fixed. It needs to be held. But self-compassion is only one wing of the bird. The other wing, the one that allows you to fly, is what Buddhist teaching calls nourishing yourself with simple joys. This is the practice of deliberately noticing and appreciating the ordinary miracles that surround you every day. Most of us wait for the big things. We wait for the vacation, the raise, the wedding, the lottery win. We think joy is a peak experience. We ignore the valleys and the plains. But this approach is like trying to quench your thirst by waiting for a monsoon while ignoring the glass of water sitting on your table. The most reliable sources of happiness are the small ones. They are constant. They are everywhere. But they are quiet, so we miss them. Consider this moment. Right now, your lungs are breathing. You didn't have to remind them. They are gifting you life, breath after breath. That is a miracle. Consider your eyes. They can see color. They can see the faces of people you love. That is a miracle. Consider the fact that you have shelter. You are safe from the wind and the rain. You have a blanket. You have a pillow. The practice of simple joys is about waking up to these gifts. It is about recovering the sense of wonder you had as a child, before you learned to take everything for granted. It changes your day. Instead of rushing through your morning coffee, you pause. You smell the roast. You feel the warmth of the mug in your hands. You taste the bitterness and the sweetness. For 30 seconds, you just enjoy the coffee. That is a moment of pure life. Instead of walking to your car thinking about your emails, you look up, you see the sky, you notice the clouds moving, you feel the breeze on your cheek, you connect with the vastness of the world. These simple pleasures provide a steady foundation of contentment. They remind you that you are not poor, you are incredibly rich in life experiences. There is a story of a wise teacher who told his students, "You have a diamond in your pocket, but you think you are a beggar. You are walking around asking the world for scraps of happiness, while you are carrying the source of happiness within you. The diamond is your capacity to notice. The diamond is your ability to appreciate. The diamond is your breath. You don't have to earn these joys. They are free. They are your birthright. You just have to open your eyes and receive them." This balance between acknowledging your suffering with kindness and nourishing your spirit with joy is the secret to walking this path for a lifetime. If you only focus on the suffering, spiritual practice becomes heavy. It becomes grim. But if you only focus on the positive and try to ignore the difficult, your practice becomes shallow and fragile. When you can hold both, when you can cry for your pain and smile for the sunset in the same hour, you are truly alive. You are resilient. The monastery teaches this rhythm. There are times to be serious and look at the hard truths of life, and there are times to laugh, to drink tea, to watch the moon. Both are holy. Both are necessary. As you integrate this into your life, remember, you don't have to do it perfectly. You just have to keep coming back. Come back to your breath. Come back to kindness. Come back to the present moment. You are doing the work simply by listening, by being willing to look at your life, by wanting to be more peaceful. That intention matters. It ripples out. You are not just healing yourself. You are contributing to the healing of your family, your community, your world, one gentle breath at a time. So, be patient. Trust the process. Trust that the diamond is there, even when you can't feel it. It hasn't gone anywhere. It is waiting for you to reach into your pocket. As our hours together draw to a gentle close, I want to offer you something that has been a tradition in these wisdom lineages for thousands of years. A blessing for your journey, not a magic spell, but a heartfelt wish, a direction for your heart to travel as you drift into rest. Tonight, you have done something courageous. You have stopped the momentum of the world. You have paused the constant doing to simply be. You have opened your mind to the possibility that peace is not a destination you have to earn, but a reality you can uncover right where you are. You have considered the possibility that you can let go of the heavy luggage you have been carrying, the need to be perfect, the need to control, the need to be right, and that in setting it down, you lose nothing but your exhaustion. As you leave this quiet space of listening and return to the rhythm of your life, or as you surrender now into the deep embrace of sleep, know that you are not returning empty-handed. You carry with you a seed of new understanding. You know now that your environment is a conversation you are having with the world, and you can change the tone of that conversation. You know that your ordinary mind, when viewed with awareness, is the temple you have been looking for. You know that compassion is not weakness, but the strongest shield you possess. The path ahead isn't about never stumbling. It isn't about becoming a person who never feels anger or fear. It is about becoming a person who can meet those feelings with the kindness of a grandmother and the wisdom of a sage. When you feel overwhelmed in the days to come, may you remember to breathe and return to this anchor. When you find your hands grasping tightly for control, may you remember the bird and open your palm. When you find yourself judging your own progress, may you remember the tree that simply grows without apology. These practices are your friends. They are always available. You can wash your dishes as a prayer. You can drive your car as a meditation. You can listen to a friend as an act of love. And most importantly, Remember to be gentle with yourself. If you forget everything you heard tonight, if you fall back into old patterns tomorrow, that is not a failure. That is just the next moment to practice self-compassion. You are part of a vast, invisible community of human beings who have chosen to walk this path of peace. You are not alone in your seeking. So now, I invite you to let go of the words, let go of the concepts, let go of the effort to understand. Just let yourself be held by the gravity of the earth. May you find moments of genuine, surprising peace in the midst of your ordinary days. May you discover joy in the simple pleasures that cost nothing, the light, the air, the water. May you treat yourself with the same exquisite kindness you would offer to a beloved friend. May you remember that your life has profound meaning, not because of what you produce, but because of the quality of presence you bring to the world. May the understanding you have touched tonight ripen naturally within you, like a seed in fertile soil, growing without your effort while you sleep. May you become a source of calm for those who are anxious, a source of clarity for those who are confused, and a source of hope for those who are weary. May your practice of letting go create space for unexpected gifts to enter your life. And finally, may you trust, deeply trust, that this moment, right now, exactly as it is, holds everything you need. You are exactly where you need to be. You are becoming exactly who you are meant to be. The path continues tomorrow. But for now, the work is done. Rest in the knowing that you are safe. You are enough. You are home. From Silent River Temple, with deep gratitude for your presence and your trust, may you walk in peace. May you sleep in peace. Good night.